Is the last year of Disney been rough for them?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had a lot of flops in a row. Most of these shows that they take issue with are just shows anyway and movies, but not because there's a trans person in it, and not because there's a woman in it. It's because they're creatively bankrupt in the exact same ideas I was talking about earlier, where they have no faith in artists and they have faith in IPs. That's exactly what they're doing. That's why all of these shows that they're doing this with are Marvel and Star Wars.
Why did this character have to be gay?
What the Barbie movie did well, Noah Baumbach, like Greta Gerwig, right? These two that created this film from their own ideas and were allowed to essentially do what they wanted with, I'm sure, some notes, but not necessarily just trying to recreate the success of like, let's do Star Wars, but it's a woman, or let's do Marvel, but it's a girl power movie. It's the creative bankruptcy that is causing these issues, not the fact that there's any sort of representation.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to episode 5 of Bridges. I am joined today by world famous music creator and movie reviewer, Adam, also known online on YouTube as Your Movie Sucks. What's up?
Hello. Thanks for having me. What's up is we finally made it. Finally together. Although we did the short little thing 2 days ago, but
how are you doing here in Miami?
Pretty good. I've noticed a couple cultural differences. A lot of parking on the grass. It's kind of amusing. I don't see that many other places. It's a little hot, but I think I'd get used to it.
Okay. We chatted a long time ago. We chatted a few times on stream about movie takes, of which we're completely in synchronization with, I think. You thought Dune 2 was better than Dune 1?
Yes.
You thought Dune 1 was meh?
Yeah.
You thought that Oppenheimer was trash? And we basically...
I wouldn't say trash, but I'm not going to... It's one of those things where it's like people will be like, oh, you should correct Destiny about his take on Oppenheimer. I'm like, well, it's not like a amazing movie. There's things that I liked about it, but yeah. I wouldn't call it trash. I would just say it kind of kneecapped itself from being a better film.
Close enough.
Yeah.
I'll take it. When you started doing movie reviews on YouTube, what was your goal? Do you think it's changed?
Wow, that's a really interesting question, because it's... I've kind of... when I started doing movie reviews on YouTube, I saw the channel Red Letter Media, and essentially that was kind of an awakening moment of being like, oh, I can actually communicate my thoughts through editing rather than just try to release some sort of vlog style video. And on one of my other channels, there's like a really, really early example of me even attempting that. I was like, oh, so I just saw the movie Sunshine and blah, 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 blah.
First movie I'm going to be reviewing. Sunshine by Danny Boyle.
Just like into my handy cam.
And I ask, when you say you can do your critique through editing, you mean like editing together parts of the movie with your commentary over it? Or?
Editing together parts of the movie with my commentary over it, but also the nature of how I approach the criticisms in the video. A lot of the criticisms are found through the editing process. A lot of the jokes is found through the personality of the editing process. So I just found that to be just a much more me way of communicating myself. I was a bit more, like, I guess, nervous and not great at speaking in general, especially to audiences at the time. And I found that just the nature of being able to record something on a microphone, be able to re-record something and stitch it in and show examples of what I'm saying, right? It's different. If you're making an argument about a film, I feel like it's better to show and support the argument that you're making by including clips of the film. And I just didn't know that was possible before that time. So the really early material on my channel is very much pretty closely emulating / ripping off Red Letter Media, but then after doing it for enough times, then I wound up finding my own style, I guess, and here I am.
I feel like when I watch a lot of YouTube kind of like movie review stuff, a lot of it is done from the perspective of kind of like an argumentative essay or a persuasive essay where they're trying to sell you on a feature of a film or argue about a particular feature of a film. I feel like when I watch a lot of your stuff, at least you're kind of like here's a bunch of movie reviews for stuff that's just come out or stuff you've seen at a film festival. It feels a little bit more neutral or subjective, like I like this movie because of this or that. And then it feels like generally you leave them there with the exception of like certain videos. When you're making stuff like that, is your goal just to communicate something you like? Is it to get people to watch stuff that you like? Is it just to like, yeah, what is the goal there?
I mean, part of the goal is expressing myself and showing the connection that I had with a film or lack thereof if I'm completely uninvested in something. Is just be honest about my own personal experience of the film, but also, you know, there's plenty of films where I could imagine someone else enjoying it, or just based on, like, I don't know, the current screenings, it's like, okay, people loved this movie, I wasn't into it, I appreciated this about it. I still want to leave people with an impression that even if they don't agree with my take on something or my general taste in movies, that they can still watch one of my videos and go like, okay, maybe I might like that movie. Or maybe I might not like this movie. There's some movies that I love, but I'm like, okay, this is a little difficult to recommend, and I wouldn't exactly recommend it to people without them being either already familiar with a certain type of artist or a certain type of filmmaking. So
why should somebody value your opinion on a movie?
I don't think that I make the case that my opinion should be valued. I think that people just inherently do, just based on the, you know, subscriber count, the amount of people that, especially the people that get pissed over my reviews. It's like, what? I don't know what. Like, if I dislike the movie that a lot of people love, people take that very seriously. It's like they're the ones essentially putting me on this pedestal of perceived legitimacy. Like, I don't come at it from any sort of academic perspective. I didn't go to film school. I'm just a person that's passionate, and I'm sharing my honest assessment.
Do you think that you're making an ask when you create a video that somebody take your opinion seriously as they're watching it?
I mean, I don't. People are free to either watch it or not watch it, or take it seriously or not take it seriously. Much like the art that I love the most, I'm not necessarily trying to appeal to every single person. My content would be a lot different if I was just trying to game the algorithm, and if I was just trying to make the most money off of it or piss off the least amount of people. So I think that there is a value, much like how I have a strong connection emotionally with the artists that I love the most. I think there is a value in being an honest person that is, you know, can be against the grain, but not because I'm specifically trying to. But if I'm saying something that I know might piss a lot of people off, still saying it anyway, because to the people that do agree or the people that do understand, it feels like a breath of fresh air to them. And then that connection between me and my audience is a lot stronger.
Okay. Okay. This is leading into questions I have.
Sure.
Okay. Yesterday, I took a little vacation. Okay, had a little LSD trip, and on my come down, I was like, you know what? Adam has recommended this movie. This is it Synecdoche?
Oh God,
Synecdoche in New York.
Synecdoche, New York.
Synecdoche, New York by Charlie Kaufman is my second favorite film of all time, and it is one that deserves to be interpreted. And if you haven't actually seen the movie yet, I encourage you to watch it and come back.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna watch this movie.
On your come down?
Yeah, why not?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't. That's not how he suggested to watch it, but
well, you know, I did.
Okay.
It was okay. I feel like Iron Man 2 expressed a lot of similar themes. Right. But wait, why'd you laugh there?
Because I don't believe you're being serious. Did you actually watched it though?
I did.
Okay.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
One of the there's, I don't know how long we're going to talk about this. If you get bored, then tell me. But apparently you have a 6-hour review on it, which I wish I would have known because I mentioned it this morning and I haven't watched your full 6-hour review. So you might have gone over a lot of this ground, but
I don't think it's 6 hours, but we're coming up to part 6, and each part is like 20 to 40 minutes, I think. And I started in 2015. And anybody that's going to watch that review, take the part at the beginning with a grain of salt where I talk about the clock a bunch because I kind of fucked up, but I address it in the next part. But everything else about it, yeah, it's themes of change and time, and also showing that older part of myself is, I think, keeping in line with the film. Anyway, where you...
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of like macro themes that tie into that movie, and then kind of questions I've asked you, and then more particularly about the movie. One thing that kind of came up to me when I finished watching, there's a whole bunch of things I was thinking about, but on a very macro level, I thought about the trust that has to exist between the audience or viewer and a filmmaker in order to make a movie that like really forces you to consider it. Yeah. And I kind of thought about, I like a lot of really accessible film. So like the Marvel movies and stuff, I genuinely do like. When I think about the relationship there between the filmmaker and me, it's a very low trust environment. They're showing me something that I want to see that's highly formulaic. I'm not being asked to consider anything like very profound or difficult. I'm just kind of there to enjoy the ride. It's like a carnival trick almost, or like a ride in in a carnival. Whereas for a movie like this, the filmmaker is trusting me, and I'm trusting him that I'm going to sit here and seriously consider something quite heavy, quite difficult, quite difficult to follow and difficult to consider. But I'm going to trust that you're not wasting my time, that you're not jerking me around, and that you're showing me something that's worth me considering. Do you have a general feeling on the I guess that aspect? This might just be a totally random, I don't know if this connects anything, but like, I guess the feeling of trust between filmmakers and moviegoers, and if you feel like that's in a low spot today, or if you feel like what I'm talking about isn't relevant to anything at all, or I
think that it really just depends on the artist, and I do have more of a level of trust with an artist like Charlie Kaufman, where I've connected to so many of his previous works. But also, even with artists that I do have a significant amount of trust with in that sense, it's still just on a case-by-case basis with each film. There are some, like Nicholas Winding Refn, who directed Drive, loved that movie. His next movie after that was called Only God Forgives. And it was something that was trying to get you to think about the deeper meanings, but I wasn't connecting enough with it in the first place. So a lot of the films that I engage with on a level where I'm willing to completely dissect it are also films that, even if they didn't really have a deeper meaning, are ones that I'd want to watch again. They're films that stand on their own merits and are offering something like amazing performances, or something really like an idea that's like really personal to me, or, you know, the music or the way that it's filmed, or Synecdoche, New York is a film that kind of beckons me as an individual, and it might not everybody, and I don't expect it to everybody, but it speaks to me on a personal level. And so that trust is kind of built through the course of watching each film.
When it comes to trusting a filmmaker to not waste your time, has there ever been a film that you've watched and you're just not connecting with it, and you finish the film and you think, maybe I didn't give it a fair shot, or maybe I need to watch it again or look for something different? Or do you just kind of trust your intuition to emotionally feel on a first watch like there's something here and I just need to pay attention a little bit more, or I didn't feel anything, this is probably whatever, and I just walk away from it? How do you determine if you're missing something versus not?
There's plenty of films that I would like clearly be, you know, I think one of the most recent example was the new Ari Aster film, Beau is Afraid. Right. I thought about the deeper meanings, and I included those thoughts in my review. And I'm sure if I watched it a second time, there would be more that I would pick up on and more that I would understand. The problem is it's like 2.5 hours long. And so I'm not, and not just because of the length, but also just because of the pacing of it, and because of the, I guess, just more of a disconnect between what it's trying to get at thematically, what it's showing. There's parts of the movie I love, but there's nothing really compelling me to want to watch it again right away. Whereas pretty much every Charlie Kaufman film that he's released, every major one anyway, there's something that makes me feel like I need to watch it again, maybe that day or maybe the next day. And I'm enjoying the experience so much, and I'm enjoying thinking about the ideas of what it's trying to get at. And it makes sense in a very purposeful kind of connecting puzzles sort of way, where the pieces fit so perfectly from what it's showing and the ideas that it's trying to get at thematically. So I forget exactly what your question is, but
I guess basically I'm curious, have you ever watched a movie and then you felt like you didn't connect with it at all, but you felt like you owed it a rewatch, and then on rewatch, on like reconsideration, you're like, oh, maybe there was a lot here that I missed, versus...
I've never felt as though I'm a movie as though I should rewatch something that I don't enjoy, even if there is some deeper meaning to it. If I'm just not into it, and I've seen it once, like, if I don't want to watch it a second time, that's the film's fault. At least if it's just trying to connect to me and only me, which it's not trying to usually, I guess.
Okay. Do you think that background information on a film should ever be necessary, or is there always some kind of background info? Or,
I mean, yeah, there's inherently always some kind of background info to anything that you experience, but I'm of the mindset that there's a lot of novels that have been translated to film, and then I'll make a video about it just being like, okay, this thing didn't make sense here, blah, 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 blah. And then people in the comments will be like, oh, if you were just paying attention, it was explained in the book. I'm like, well, the whole point of adapting a novel to a film would be that it's accessible as a film standalone. Otherwise, it's just a companion piece, which they're not selling it as. So I don't think that you should inherently have to look up other things about a film to be able to connect with it. But a lot of the films that I do love, I've gotten my own personal value out of doing that, but it's already because it connected with me in the first place with just the film alone and no supplemental material.
You've recommended Synecdoche. I am saying this right, is it?
Synecdoche.
Yeah, Synecdoche in New York. You've recommended this to me. I've seen you recommend it to others and say it's one of your top 1 or 2 favorite films of all times. When you finished watching it, what was the feeling afterwards? I guess on a first viewing, like why did you connect with it so much? What did you like about it?
So I loved the sense of humor, but I also loved the, I guess, perceived morbidity of it. And the ideas that it's trying to express, even though there were much more complex ideas that I didn't pick up on a first watch, there are some universal truths or things that I consider to be universal truths that they literally just say out loud in the movie pretty explicitly. You know, the idea like, oh, we're all going to die and everybody's just kind of like walking around and nobody's really addressing it, or the concept of trying to make art in such a pure and uncompromising way that you sacrifice literally everything else and that's the only thing that matters. There are things to pick up on it in a first watch where it's like, oh wow, these are like just pieces of my own life. And then I'm like really interested in figuring out more about it, because the more that you examine art that you closely relate with, the more you understand about yourself. And I'm a very introspective person where it's like, am I even trying to figure out the movie, or am I trying to figure out my own head after a sense, especially with this film?
When, in terms of the messaging of having somebody tell you what to do or tell you who you are or figuring out who you are based on how other people view you, what do you think is the goal of Kaufman when he's making this film and he's, I guess, like exploring those concepts? Like when I'm watching Caden, I guess is his name, right at the end, like living his life. I don't know if it's doing his most perfect performance or living his most true self. It's when there's somebody who's been observing him or hired to observe people who are hired to observe him or hired to act like him, is like telling him literally what to do through, you know, like a headphone. Is this like the best way to get a view of yourself, or what do you think he's saying there for that? Like, what is the commentary on that?
Okay, so the idea of actors playing other actors and people playing versions of themselves and then zooming back and getting the meta layer where you're watching the film camera in the film and then you're seeing that. And then on a micro level, you're seeing Caden seeing literally himself in the advertisements in the film. It's basically like a fractal movie where you can zoom in infinitely and zoom out infinitely. And it applies just the same. And, you know, just the play on word synecdoche as well. When he's being told what to do, I guess these are spoilers. Everybody watch this movie, by the way. I don't want to like explain the whole movie.
I don't know if you can spoil this
exactly.
movie. Like I read a wiki synopsis. It was like 2 years ago, and like part of it is like, at this point in the movie, the actress hired to play his wife falls in love with the actor hired to play, and it's like I don't even. I'm reading. So it doesn't make any sense but when you watch it,
yeah, and there is a level of consistency to it that's incredible, like the script supervising and just making sure that what they're filming is actually what they're showing. It's such a complex film, but in terms of them playing versions of themselves and him creating this play, essentially what he is doing as his character is he's also a representation of himself, Charlie Kaufman. Like he's as much Caden as anybody that relates with Caden on such a hyper specific degree also is. And
something finish that.
Through the art that he's creating is how he's essentially trying to find connections with people. And in that zoomed out layer, Charlie Kaufman is essentially doing the same thing.
Something that I thought was interesting for the movie is they play with the replaceability of essentially any subject by any other person, you know, whether it's a girl playing him or him stepping into somebody else's role or whatever. And then it almost feels like some of the scenarios are like interchangeable as well, that everything can be traded out with anything else. I don't know if it would have been too meta or Mimi or whatever. It would be even interesting just to see like a mini documentary or an actual like making of this film, because the idea of watching Kaufman telling another guy to act differently but not act like so differently, like just watching that would have been, because it is the movie, right? You say, right, like taking another step back and another step back and another step back. It makes you wonder how much of Caden is Kaufman or how much of Kaufman is Caden, or if you could just step back infinitely and see literally the same thing.
Yeah, I think he created a film that he sees himself in, and he created himself and expressed himself through the art. The art is him. It's literally a piece of himself. And the goal of both Charlie Kaufman and Caden, when he creates his play, is to make the most uncompromising thing that truly reflects the deprived, sad, lonely nature of his own soul to find connections with other people.
When you come out of that film emotionally, do you feel like what's been communicated or conveyed, does it feel hopeful? Does it feel like mournful? I guess what is like is it an uplifting type of thing, or is it like an isolating, alone in the universe type of thing? I'm curious, like emotionally, what do you feel after watching that?
Everybody feels as though it's a depressing film, and I used to. And my most recent watch, I don't feel that way anymore. And I feel as though it is a hopeful film, because it's not, I mean, it is and it isn't. This is a film where things are almost everything in everything in the film is both true and untrue at the same time. Like, there are things that are and aren't simultaneously. So it is about death. It is about everything. It's also about one thing, right? It's about everyone. It's about one specific person simultaneously. And I feel as though the message of, some people might consider Caden's end result to be one where he didn't succeed because he never premiered his play. But the play that he made was so true to life that him dying in the play and never finishing it and communicating that is a part of himself and those are his problems, but he accurately presented his problems within the art form. The rehearsal was the play, right? There needs not to be the actual opening date show. It's an impossibility. It is the play that goes on forever, but he created it, and that's what it was. The perceived disappointments and failures were actually successes. Okay. Is how I feel.
What made you reconsider that? Like you said, when you initially watched it, you were kind of like mournful. I feel I'm a little upset because I watched this one time, and I feel like this is easily a film you could watch 5, 6, 7 times with like a different theme in your head through every single playthrough, and you're going to take something away from it differently. It sounds very pretentious. I don't normally watch films like this, but it truly is like a very interesting, mindful film.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes,
good.
I super enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting.
Okay, awesome.
I think that I'm sure you could have made it with other actors, but I feel like Philip Seymour Hoffman just did an amazing job playing that role as well. I think everybody's performance is really good, but I really, really liked him as the lead actor for that. I really like I like things that play. I really appreciate things that fully utilize a medium that make it hard to imagine it existing in another medium.
Of course.
Like you can't really write a book saying, he came into the room and a lady stand next to the wall looking like wallpaper. Like it wouldn't make sense to write that. Or some of the shots showing the multiple layers of like, I think one of the first ones that did this was downstairs, the lady was writing something, a daughter is playing right here, and he's peeing in the sink, and like all of it is like, there's like a lot of like imagery play like that only works on film. Yeah. And I appreciate that a ton. Yeah.
And also with the imagery, like it adds to a sense of subtlety if it's something that you can observe rather than if it were, in a novel form. You would have to explicitly point out like the color of a dress, and then, then that's already kind of like, okay, well, why are you pointing that out specifically? I mean, I don't know.
I noticed something that film can do that music can kind of do, but not really, and books I don't think can do at all. It was when you were talking about that a few days ago. You were here and we were talking about, you brought up a split diopter shot, I think. And something that I realized in that moment, and then especially when watching the Synecdoche New York, is that one of the cool things about film is there's a focus, but there's still stuff that's out of focus. And that out of focus stuff would be really hard to communicate in another medium, but it gives you a feeling, it informs what you're watching for a film like this. Yeah,
the scenery, everything that you place in a frame to make an environment feel either lived in or not lived in, right? The set design is incredible in the film, and the concepts for the set design especially. Snubbed. Didn't get a single Oscar nom.
Damn, really?
Yeah.
Does he traditionally win awards, or?
Charlie Kaufman, I think he won for Best Original Screenplay for Eternal Sunshine. He was at the very least nominated, but I don't remember if he won or not.
I think probably because it's probably a little bit of a tighter film because it's less
and way
ambitious,
more accessible,
and it's a love story kind of, right?
Jim Carrey, and That one was something that was able to kind of like take off, whereas like Synecdoche, New York, its premiere at Cannes was like half applause, half booze, which is not like unusual for Cannes, I guess, but it's one of those where it's like it's people would watch it and think like, this is the worst movie ever, And if they're not into it and not really the type of person that is engaging with either the ideas that it's going for, or maybe they see these explicit ideas communicated in the film and they don't consider them to be universal truths in the same way that I would, and they wouldn't be willing to engage with the film much further, right? So I'm not sure. He's my favorite screenwriter and probably the artist that's like impacted my life the most in a personal way. And it sucks because every single project, it seems like he's just having so much trouble getting it off the ground. Because he makes films that are challenging, and there's not enough people watching them. And there's not enough people that are into the same sort of thing that I am, but he still doesn't really compromise himself. I'm sure he tries to be appealing in some way. I think when he made Anomalisa, the stop motion animated film, he was saying that he was hoping that it would be like a more bigger hit, sort of touching on some more universally appealing things. But sometimes it's just up to the distribution or the advertising. Like sometimes things just get buried in that way. So
it's kind of relating to the first thing I said, because after I finished watching it, it reminds me that the concept of trust. I don't trust Kaufman because I don't watch any of his movies. I've seen the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but I trusted your take, and I was like, well, that is a really good movie. I'll give him my attention and I'll do it. But it seems like it's hard at the movie theater to make truly ambitious films that are asking for a lot of active participation from an audience, because there's like, I think you would say that you can watch stuff passively and you can watch stuff actively, that the medium lends itself to either thing. That there are films that you can watch and just kind of like be there and maybe even kind of look at your phone a little bit or whatever, and you're more or less getting like 95% of the film. And then there's other movies that you can watch that call for a higher level of consideration, and you have to like actively be engaged with it the entire time. Otherwise, there's like no point in really enjoying it.
With the film industry being a business, when any studio buys the rights to a film, and they buy a film that, might be doing great critically, and it's attached to a person that had an Oscar nomination, and maybe that's the reason why they bought it. But it's difficult for them to now come to terms with the fact that they have a very unique and challenging original movie. But when you're advertising something, you're trying to evoke a sense of familiarity, which is why a lot of the A24 horror movies, like they're unique horror movies, but you see the trailers for them and then they're completely dishonest about what they are. They pretend as if they're like, oh, the standard horror movie you see every year. And then people watch them and get disappointed because they're like, oh, what? I didn't want to watch this art house nonsense. In that same way, there was a notable struggle to market Synecdoche, New York. You can see some of the posters will have quotes on the front like, the funniest comedy of the year. And it's like, I don't know if I would go with that. Like that's not. But how do you market the film? Like I think of a lot of marketing decisions were left up to the artists themselves. They would at least be able to accurately showcase what they're offering in a film. And this has happened plenty of times before. My favorite director, Michael Haneke, or Michel Haneke, he's Austrian. He has a lot of control over the trailers he releases. So when you watch a trailer for one of his films, you're like, oh, I get the tone. Like you're not going to be tricked by any of his movies. You're going to be like, oh, this is a slow-paced, performance story drama thing, and this is what I'm going to get out of it, rather than this weird sort of trailerism nonsense that people keep trying to fit into a box. But the movie doesn't fit into a box. It's its own thing. And I think that if they were more honest about that, then that might be a marketing strategy in of itself. That's what There Will Be Blood did. The first trailer for that film, Paul Thomas Anderson, he wound up releasing his own trailer online, basically just against any permission. He didn't have permission from the studio. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to cut together my own thing. And it's just Daniel Day-Lewis playing Daniel Plainview, and the weird string musics and him like by the fire and being like, oh, the performance alone. And it doesn't say much about like, oh, what is the whole plot of this movie? But it gets you into what it's going for. Like, this is a character piece. The music's really fucked up and I love the tone. This is what we're getting out of it. And it did really well online, and that helped promote the film in a way that if it was left up to the traditional marketing people, it might not have.
Do you think that when you mentioned the studio A24, do you feel like the studio in general is moving audiences towards accepting more artsy films, or do you think they've kind of fallen into a gimmick of sorts? Or how do you view positively or negatively their push towards getting audiences to have like a wider appreciation for different types of movies?
It's a little bit of both. A24 is successful because compared to other studios and distributors, they're not constantly asking for or sending notes to the director along every step of the process. They essentially just take artists that they trust, and obviously they're probably going to want to see some sort of short film or proof of concept before they fund or anything like that. But from my understanding, a lot of the reason why they were able to make themselves such a brand is because the directors themselves have a bit more creative control, which I think is great. A24 is not the only company that's doing this. Neon seems to be really great at producing a lot of crazy, unique films, or at least distributing them as well. And I think that there is, because of A24 particularly, because they're the more popular, more well-known brand, I think that there is a bit more of an appetite for challenging films because of them. So I would say that that's a good thing, even though it does seem like now there's this expectation of what an A24 movie is, right? So you throw A24 title at the beginning of the trailer, some people might just immediately assume just like, oh, is this going to be a fucked up horror movie? That's not every movie that they make. They make tons of different movies, but there is this weird kind of expectation, or even expectation of quality. Some people will be like, oh, that means it's going to be good. It's like, you haven't seen their full library.
Yeah. There's, oh God, I wish I could remember. Was Good Time A24?
Yes.
Yeah, there are a lot of movies that I look back, it's like, oh, I had no idea. Because for a while I thought, oh yeah, Midsummer and Hereditary, and they just do like horror movies. The one movie, the Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think that was A24. Yeah, it's surprising. They have a really, really huge catalog. I didn't realize at the time.
Yeah, they've been going for a while. I think their first ones were in like 2013. So there's been over 10 years of A24 films.
When you look at McDonald's tier films, so films that are super accessible, taste good to most people, but they occupy a lot of space in the movie world, meaning people will only pay to see so many movies, people will only pay to produce so many movies. Do you view things like Marvel movies or kind of like the made for instantaneous consumer consumption and then to be forgotten immediately? Do you think that those things are bad or harmful to the art world, or that people shouldn't endorse them as much as they do? Or
I mean, I think that people should enjoy whatever they enjoy. I do think that I guess negative consequences of something like that might not be a direct result of the films themselves. There's certain theater chains that would, because Disney essentially owns all of these properties, they would essentially blackmail a bunch of theater chains like, no, you have to be playing this in 10 screens or else we're not going to give you the license to play a Disney movie ever again. So they're just like, okay, I guess we're forced to do this. And then some other interesting art house films just wouldn't be there because it's like, oh, we have to have this Marvel movie there and we have to have this many screens. Like, we don't have many screens left for, any other film that needs a bit more attention. So I think that is a harmful byproduct of it. But the movies themselves, I mean, I can't force people to like Synecdoche, New York, and I can't force people to dislike Iron Man. So it's just a matter of me sharing my voice, and if other people connect with it, then they might find me a valuable person to listen to for recommendations about what new films are out that maybe they might not hear from their friend, or they might not hear from like other critics that exist, because they might just connect with my taste more. So I don't think it's harmful, I guess, on its own, but there are surely harmful aspects, I guess.
I read something interesting a long time ago from, I think it was one of the animators or writers or somebody that worked on shows on Adult Swim. And I'm connecting with your comment about how you can't force people to like a particular movie. And this, I wish I could remember. I need to find this so I could reread this for stream. The take was very interesting, that you can force people to like things, but in the current media environment we live in, where you can choose what to watch, that's like a graveyard for creative thought. And one of the arguments that he gave was on Adult Swim, you have no idea what's going to work or what's not going to work. But what you could do on TV is you could take a really popular show that everybody loves, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and you could throw afterwards a really weird show. You have no idea if people are going to connect with it or not. But because it's part of TV programming, people are sitting there, they're watching the one show, the next show comes on, they're like, fuck it. And they watch it because they're kind of forced to. And wow, you know what? Some of them end up liking it, some people don't. But because it's like there as part of the programming, and it's not just like an app where you pick to rewatch The Office 50 million times, or you rewatch your favorite movie 50 million times, or you watch the 17th iteration of Uncle Ben dying in a Spider-Man movie, that forcing people to watch things can actually like make them open up their
Yeah.
horizons more in ways that they do appreciate, but they kind of have to just be walked to it, you know?
Yeah, I would just consider that to be in the same vein as like marketing and advertising, because that's essentially what they're doing is they're offering like, oh, a lot of eyes on one thing, and you know, the format of traditional television, it's just already playing. But the same thing can exist for things like Netflix, where they can put an ad on the front page and just be like, oh, this new thing's out, and not just bury it in like 20 pages. Like no one's going to watch it if they don't know it exists, right? And that's really the biggest factor when it comes to a movie's success is knowing that it exists.
Do you think that like streaming services making movies now, do you think that's been overall like a positive contribution, or and am I hallucinating, or is there like a formula for Amazon or Netflix where you take like one formerly A-list, now B-list actor, and you put them in the most like stock action movie ever? I'm thinking like The Gray Man, I think. I mean, Matt Damon, I think, was in one of these. Yeah, do you think
it's not a formula from streaming services? It's just a continuation of a formula that we used to see in direct to DVD.
Sure.
So
okay. True. Yeah.
It's the new direct to DVD, and it's pretty much the same thing. And you know, depending on the streaming service, there's I would say more opportunity for success or more eyes on a film through the streaming platform rather than just direct to DVD, because that now that like legitimate, large, high budget, high profile films are being made for Netflix, Apple TV, all of these streaming services, it's not like when direct to DVD there was this huge disconnect of like, this was in a theater, this wasn't. Now all of these are kind of like on the same platform. So I think maybe it gives a little bit more eyes to those smaller projects. Not saying that those smaller projects are inherently good, but yeah, I think the best thing that people can do is to try and find people that you trust with film recommendations or film takes, or directors that you trust, or just people that work on a project that they trust. Unfortunately, the average film goer, we're talking average film goer, it's a lot of the time people just, they have no idea who directed a movie. They have no idea who wrote a movie. They just know the star that is in it. And if Hugh Jackman's on the poster, that might influence because someone has seen a few other Hugh Jackman films and they've been like, oh, might be exactly like the other things that I've seen, and they want something familiar. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, because everybody's getting different experiences out of art. Some people are just looking to turn off their brains. There's plenty of times where I've not wanting to engage with something, I'm like, I'm just gonna watch a fucking reality show. Like, I don't want to watch anything real right now. But yeah, if there is an appetite for more challenging films, and if people do want to see greater art, especially if you're a person that says there's no good movies in this current year or this current generation, you're not watching the right movies. Hundreds of Beavers is out right now. I'm gonna pimp this out every fucking day. Hundreds of Beavers is out on Apple, like iTunes or whatever they call it, in Canada, US, and Mexico, and it's out on Amazon in the States. It's one of the best movies ever. It's one of the highest rated movies on Letterboxd this year. Everybody's fucking loving it. It's a blast. So I want to hear from people in this chat at some point saying that they watched that movie, because then I know I'm doing my job.
Do you think I agree with you about the actor thing. Like I joked about Iron Man 2. Like I like Iron Man and Iron Man 2, but I have no idea who directed those movies. And it's probably going to be the case for a lot of movies that I do enjoy, with some exceptions. How do you feel when people bring up names like Nolan and Tarantino? Do you think it's good that these particular directors have like so much name recognition? Like everybody wants to see the next Nolan or Tarantino movie. Do you think it's become like a bit gimmicky, or? It's
kind of interesting, because I think to some extent, there has to be a level of mass public appeal to their films, but also a level of consistency. Because there's directors that have made hit after hit after hit, but you watch their films and it doesn't really feel like they have a voice. Like you wouldn't be able to just watch it and be like, oh yeah, this is one of, I'm blanking on a name, but there's plenty of examples. Just director for hire type films. Whereas Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, and even smaller directors like Wes Anderson, they're kind of becoming household names just because they're consistent in their style, and people go, oh, I want to see more of this type of thing that I like. And I think that they're offering, you know, even if their films are different, they're offering things that at least connect with the people that enjoyed their previous work. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I would say there's a lot of better artists out there and a lot of smaller artists. And if the people that need more help, I would like to see get more attention. Christopher Nolan can fund any movie he wants to. He's not going to get studio notes. He can just ask for a huge chunk of hundreds of millions of dollars and then just say, I want to make a thing. And he gets to make a thing. And meanwhile, Charlie Kaufman is struggling to get some low budget projects funded. And it's upsetting. So I would like to just help out the smaller creators, the talented smaller creators anyway.
Do you know how much these movies cost to make? Any idea?
Christopher Nolan's?
No.
Oh, Charlie Kaufman?
Because I'm pretty sure those are hundreds of millions. Yeah, Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah, films. I think Synecdoche might have been like 10 million.
Okay.
I think I'm thinking of Ending Things, which came after that, might have been less. That might have been just a few million. Like, I would say around the 10 million range for like a really one of his like more ambitious films, and then I don't know what his highest budget film would be, but there's definitely not in the hundreds of millions for sure.
Do you think there's a value in, I've heard people argue for mid-budget films, that this idea between like this like $1 to $15 million price range is enough to experiment and do a lot of cool stuff without a studio having to stake out like a $250 million risk on somebody?
Yeah, because then they're the notes that studios give to artists is oftentimes a result of them just being like, we need to make a return on investment. You need to follow the checklist. This is the proven checklist. For a while, it was just do this, put the name Marvel or Star Wars on it. And then the past year of Disney is like, oh, they can't really rely on that anymore. It looks like they're spending way too much money, putting content out way too frequently, and there's no voice to it. There's no real artistry to it. There's not enough different voices or different talented people that are being allowed to do creative things, and so that's kind of harming them. But
is the last year of Disney been rough for them?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had a lot of flops in a row. So I don't know if they've made up for it in terms of like streaming service subscribers, but part of their business model, and also the fact that people are subscribed to this thing and they're expecting the movie to come out later than anyway, might have impacted their theatrical sales. They've had a lot of theatrical flops in the past year.
I don't know if I'm hallucinating this or if I just don't pay attention to stuff closely. Maybe it's always been like this. I feel like when things would come out in theaters, you'd have like this half-year delay before it would hit digital. I feel like it's happening in a matter of weeks now. Am I making that up, or
it depends on the movie?
Okay,
depends on the movie. The only ones that we'll see. That's not incorrect.
I don't know if it's Dune 2 or something. There are some movies where I feel like I just saw this in theaters and it's like on YouTube, like for purchase. And I'm like, Jesus, that's like wild to me.
I mean, I think that they probably try to gauge it based on whichever movie it is. And if they feel like they can kind of ride the momentum of, everybody, when they see a movie now, is just posting about it on social media, right? So even successful movies that aren't necessarily like, oh, we got to take it out of theaters because it's tanking, will wind up being available just on iTunes, Apple, YouTube, Amazon, etc. Just because that's how the industry is shifting, and because that's making up a more significant portion of the revenue that films are generating.
Do you feel strongly about the movie experience, like going to a theater, or do you not care? Do you think people watch it on cell phones or on monitors in their computer rooms?
Yeah, I don't. If whatever way someone wants to watch a movie, I'm not going to take like a huge issue with. I'm not like a purist, like, oh, you can't watch it on your phone. Like, I don't know. These movies were available on VHS, and that wasn't like, phones look a lot better than VHS, especially if you're listening with good headphones at this point. So if we weren't willing to say that VHS was not an acceptable way to watch a movie, and that was not a pure experience, like, I don't know. But it's, some people want to experience art in different ways. If the way you want to experience art is in a social setting and you're like chatting with your friends a bit throughout the movie, that's a perfectly valid way to experience a movie. But I would argue that, certain films, like that are commanding a bit more of your attention, that you kind of need to be paying more attention to, you might get less out of those experiences, or you might just want to watch it a second time and try to pick up more about it. But I don't think that there's a necessarily wrong way to watch a movie, in my opinion.
Interesting. Okay. I feel like there is a value to the ritual itself is fun. Yeah. Stepping into the theater, buying popcorn, sitting down, the trailers, everybody's being quiet. I also feel like there's a value to the physical space that something occupies. I happen to have a nice, like, decently large TV and a decently large sound system, so watching that Synecdoche movie was fun, but I feel like it would be a lot to sit and watch that in theaters. I feel like would be there's like this, maybe this is like a little cringe or a little meta, but when you've watched like a really powerful movie, I think when the credits roll and like nobody gets up, nobody's standing, nobody's leaving, everybody's just kind of there, and you can all tell that you like, oof, That was a lot. Yeah, there are definitely movies that I've really enjoyed watching in theaters, and that experience has been really special that I feel like I wouldn't have gotten the same out of watching at home. But I mean, like, maybe that experience is just like a separate fun experience. It's not integral to the movie itself, and it's just like a separate thing. But
there's pros and cons for sure. It depends on the audiences, depends on the theater. I try to avoid, like, you generally, my experience has shown that if you're watching a movie and the theater is in a mall and it's a horror movie, probably the worst audiences, bunch of teenagers who were literally just hanging out at the mall, not because they wanted to see a movie, and are now in the movie because they wanted to kill time, and are now talking through the movie because they want to prove to their girlfriend that they're tough and they're not actually scared, right? So those are generally bad audiences. But film festivals like TIFF, my favorite film festival, Toronto Film Festival, generally, like, very, very respectful audiences and very engaged audiences as well. There's an energy to the crowd, and you can really tell that everybody's just there because they want to be, and they're loving what they're experiencing, which is always just a great environment and a great festival. Yeah. So there is a valuable experience to it, but I don't necessarily feel as though I often say that I wish that I could have seen a movie in theaters, unless it's a particular type of comedy that I would have loved to experience with a laughing crowd. Sometimes I've felt that way about it. And then other times I felt like, just purely for the sake of the film's distribution, like, why did this go to Hulu? It should have had a theatrical release, because I like the director and I wish that they would have gotten more success out of it and had a bit more longevity out of the release.
Yeah. I don't know if it was Scorsese or Fincher. I remember somebody gave like an angry rambling about watching a movie on your phone. That's
that
not
was
how
David Lynch.
Oh, was it Lynch?
Yeah,
okay,
he's done it a couple times. He's funny.
Okay.
But he's a purist in so many ways, that he's a fun, crazy old kook.
When you talk about purists, do you have a strong feeling? I think Tarantino does this a lot, between like digital versus like film.
I mean, it's whatever. There's a lot of films that exist that are still emulating older styles and shoot on digital for practical and budgetary reasons, and then we'll even do something like, shoot in color and then remove the color in post and have it black and white. The White Ribbon by Michelle Haneke. Like, if you know what to look for, you can tell it's digital, but it still doesn't, like, I don't feel like I'm not in the time period because it's a digital movie. I mean, like, to some extent, the idea of watching a film and having changing angles and all the technology associated with that, like, that's not real in the film's universe, at least, depending on the film. So I've definitely seen a value in terms of shooting on film for stylistic purposes, and if there's directors that really want to, champion that, especially as a way of screening films, I'm glad to see that there are some directors that are really, like, trying to keep it alive, because I don't know, once Quentin Tarantino is not really in the business anymore, I don't know how many more people you're going to be able to get to watch films in, like, a actual film projected screening. I guess Christopher Nolan did the, like, 70 millimeter IMAX of a few films, and maybe Denis Villeneuve could do it, but I mean, a lot of those films are still shot on digital.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then just transferred to film for the shooting theater?
Yeah, depending on the film. I would have to look it up, but
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Lighter stuff. I need you to validate some of my opinions, okay?
Sweet.
Lycan.
Let's do it.
What?
The first streamable under bad movie takes. These are supposed to be labeled really good movie takes, but
so these are movie takes that you've had that people think are bad.
Just a few. Okay. I want to see how you feel about them.
Okay.
Before we do that, though, okay. Do you do a lot of political research?
Oh boy, and things that I feel directly impact my life. I did a lot of, like, COVID research, because I was like, okay, shit's going down here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what's happening to the best of my ability and not, like, maybe die.
Well, you know what? If you wanted to know what's happening to the best of your ability, maybe you should check out check.ground.news/Bridges Podcast, because this is a news site that gathers a whole bunch of different publications together under one site, shows you different people reporting the same thing, allows you to go through and compare one article to the next, and it keeps up with all the current events. And wow, what a great ground news site. Check.ground.news/Bridges Podcast. You can check them out in the future if you need to.
I think I will
be updated on things.
The news is divided. Ground News puts it back together with coverage from thousands of outlets around the world in one place. so you can spot sensational reporting, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. Beside every headline, you'll see who owns the source, how reliable it is, and if they have a political bias. Multiple perspectives side by side, giving you a well-rounded view of today's biggest stories. Visit ground.news to learn more.
Okay. I don't watch many movies, so be nice to me, okay?
Have you seen Band of Brothers?
No, it's garbage. I would never waste my time.
Probably.
How many more World War II things do we really need to watch? Okay, we got it. The Nazis were bad. They killed people. We get it, okay?
Get over it.
Exactly.
Satire, everybody. Sorry.
Important to clarify
Not
today.
getting clip chip.
All right, you guys ready?
Sure. Oh, so we're getting video footage of the takes.
Video footage.
I'm so happy.
We live, baby. All right.
Couldn't believe it. I was like, it's not going to be as bad as Dunkirk. Probably won't be as good as like Inception, which is Nolan's best movie, by the way.
I don't know why I say this.
So I'm like shooting for like Interstellar, maybe around there, because I've heard a lot of hype. Okay, I'm shooting for Interstellar. Maybe it's Interstellar good. And man, what a dog shit fucking movie. What a dog shit fucking movie.
All right, we get it.
I just couldn't believe it.
Okay. This movie got a lot of awards, all right?
Oppenheimer.
Okay. All right. Follow me for a second, okay? You're the movie guy,
I'm
okay?
following you.
Walk me through this, okay?
Yes.
I'm not a movie guy, okay? This is my feeling, all right? About Christopher Nolan, okay? I feel like for his early movies, I feel like he trusted the actors more. He was comfortable holding a camera on an actor, letting them act, letting them convey a feeling to the audience, relying on their abilities and the writing to take us from scene to scene. I think Memento is a really good example of this. I think The Prestige is a pretty good example of this. And I feel like we've kind of talked about this before. There's this I call this like a Marvel editing technique where you have the entire movie is like you're sucked along in this like music edit movie line, like quotable line, and then next scene.
Yeah.
And there's never an actual moment where you're like, the actors are allowed to act, and you've got longer shots where you're getting emotions and feelings, and you're like, the movie is almost being told through the editing, which is very intense. And I felt like Oppenheimer was the worst example, or maybe best example, of like Nolan doing that in a film, to where there were big scenes, I think when his ex-girlfriend dies, where it's all of like 20 seconds to get that and process it and move on. Or he has like a son who he mentions for like one scene, and then 2 scenes later, he's 6 years old. I feel like the emotional conveying on like Nolan films has gotten significantly worse. And I feel like Oppenheimer is a big... Do you think that take is defensible, or would you disagree? You think I'm not viewing it correctly? There's another way to look at it.
I think I don't disagree too hard. I would say that I'm not sure I would categorize it as him having like less faith in his actors at this point. I would say the challenge of something like Oppenheimer is when you're constructing it, especially with it being a real life person, and he's not only just trying to talk about like the creation of the bomb, but then he's talking about this whole other side story with, I'm not a huge history buff, but Downey Jr.'s character, forget his name in real life, but
Strauss?
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, Strauss. And so he's trying to communicate all these ideas at once. There's a lot of a huge time period over the course of these ideas taking place narratively in the film. And so I could see why that could present a unique challenge in terms of how you're going to structure the film and how you're going to write it and how you're going to present it. I still feel as though it might just be because he's such a big name now, and that he isn't getting as many notes and he can do whatever he wants. And it might just be more of a him thing and not enough other collaborators. Like maybe there needs to be one more cook in the kitchen. I'm not sure.
I feel like when you bring up the not trusting the actors to act thing, I think that music works as a very good exclamation mark, or can really sell or drive home something that you're seeing. But I feel like maybe I'd have to go back and Oppenheimer. Maybe my impression is not correct, but I feel like when you've got background music driving almost every single scene,
it like never stops.
I really don't like that. It feels way too aggressive to me, I guess.
It was incredibly aggressive, and it took me a little bit to get used to it when I realized it. Like, okay, the movie is doing this. This is a weird, interesting choice. I was like, oh, is this like a Terrence Malick film? Like, well, I don't know what's going on here. But it was almost unlike any other Christopher Nolan film in that sense, because it was just edited essentially like it was a trailer. And I was kind of confused, but I got used to it after a while and just thought like, oh, I guess this is the whole movie. But then they dropped it halfway through the movie, and then you got a lot more. There were some scenes where it's like, oh, they're the actors given a chance to perform their line, or like you can get a chance to absorb something, and it became a bit more of a traditional narrative, and then it turned into a trailer again for a while, and I felt like the lack of consistency was bothering me a bit with it. Like, if this is the type of movie you want to make, and you do want to make something that's like really weird, edited like a trailer sort of thing, like go for it. But it was a very odd choice, and for the entirety of the film, I'm not sure that it worked. When it comes to the music, though, I will point out I didn't have much of an issue with the actual score, and there was one part in the movie. I forget exactly what line was said. I think maybe somebody died or something, but they hit Oppenheimer and his wife, girlfriend, I don't remember. There were two people outside. It was kind of like low lit, and there were some trees. It was like autumn or something.
Sitting behind a rock or something.
Yeah, the rock. And during that point in the film, the soundtrack did this really cliched sounding like piano melody. And I was like, why are you doing this that sounds like every other thing? And then when I was about to talk about it in my review, I went through the entire released OST to try and find that point to showcase as an example. And I couldn't find it. And I was like, okay, well, wait, did I remember wrong? And so sometimes when I'm trying to figure out if something actually happened in a movie that's in theaters, I'll reference like a cam rip, just so I can be like, okay, did this happen or didn't it? And it did happen in the movie. So what must have happened was that the editor of the film took another part of the score from somewhere else in the film, preemptively ended the piano note early artificially, and then stuck it in that scene and made something that sounded like really cliched, which was kind of annoying because it's like, well, Ludwig didn't score that part. You just took another part of his score and then made it sound really like kind of formulated and really manipulative in a way where it seemed like the composer didn't do that. And in that sense, and then along with a lot of the other editing in the film, I don't love the editing. I think the editing kind of hurts the movie.
Yeah.
I think there's a better movie based on what was filmed in the editing room floor, maybe cut out a bunch. It was, a little longer than it needed to be, but
yeah. And it felt like way too many. It reminds me of the Every Frame of Painting review of like J.J. Abrams, where he tries to make every single, it was Michael Bay, I think, tries to make every shot like so epic.
Yeah.
There were so many like wide shots of like the characters like staring off into space, or like giving like what's supposed to be the most epic fucking line in the world, like over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh my God.
I think that there's certain ways that films can be presented that are very, very, very emotionally effective, and we could even use the word manipulative if we wanted to. That I think that a lot of films that I feel this particular way about, where it's like, oh wow, like everybody's like really into it, and I can understand why, and I see what the film is doing, but it feels also like borderline cynical in how it's doing it. Especially, every line written is just like, this is the most important line in the world, as if you're watching top 50 greatest performance on YouTube compilation, and it's all just men saying serious things and yelling or whatever. Like, oh, I didn't know this, blah, 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 blah. And it's just going for like this very, very aggressive, very hard tone that works really well for people. But sometimes the way I feel about these sorts of movies is like, is this the type of thing where people are watching it now, where this seems fine, but we might look back at this retrospectively 20 years ago and kind of go like, oh, that's kind of cheese. I don't know. Because it's difficult to tell in the time period.
I also think the A and B plot didn't work. I didn't like the two plots juxtaposed to each other, because I didn't feel like I feel like people sometimes use a lot of meta information to say like, oh, this is why it's important that he's going to lose his security clearance and blah, blah, blah. But I feel like the movie didn't sell me why I should care at all. Like in one sense, I've got like the bomb that's going off that I know intuitively, like it's a big bomb. It's going to kill a lot of people. That's really important. And is it going to work or not? And in World War II, that's important. And then there's this whole second part that I feel like doesn't mirror the themes, because usually A and B plots, even if they're totally different, they kind of mirror the themes of each. I feel like they didn't do that much. They didn't feel like they played off each other. And then they had that like huge twist where like Strauss was like the secret bad guy, and that seems like it was supposed to be a big deal. And I'm like, I don't know if I even care about any of this, but it's like the whole second half of the movie, and I'm like,
I'm not sure Strauss was necessary.
Yeah,
Like,
but it was like
trying
there
to
was a
do so
big
many things at
twist, and then like
once,
the whole reveal
yeah.
and his exposition of his evil plot to bring down Oppenheimer and everything in Congress, and then there was like the scenes at the table where Oppenheimer's wife is actually like secretly like really baller, and it's like, but I don't know.
I felt like there was a lot of information in the movie that was repeated without adding anything to the stakes of it, and just more or less repeated as kind of a reinforcement of something that we already knew, and it's still offering that same tone again that a lot of people seem to really connect with. But yeah, I was not connected to half the movie, but another half of the movie, not any, specifically one half, but I did connect with a lot of what it was doing artistically. The bomb scene and the audio choices, the sound design choices were really good in that scene as well. And the way things were filmed, a lot of the performances. One thing I was kind of weirded out by was like, it felt kind of Marvel movie-esque in terms of how many like cameo appearances there were. Like, it's how many different every single actor that existed was kind of in it.
I was going to bring that up. This was one of the first movies I've seen where I was like distracted by the number of celebrity appearances. Yeah, and I was like, really? Yeah. Holy shit. There were so many people showing up. The guy from The Boys was there. Like, there were so many
a lot of people that just show up and aren't really necessary to, like, they're just kind of showing up to show up.
Yeah.
A lot of people that didn't really have any real impact on the story.
Yeah. One thing, I know you weren't like a huge fan of this movie, which is fine, I'll forgive it. The 1917 movie, one thing that I liked that they did in kind of a meta way, initially I didn't like it, and then I read an explanation for it, and I actually really liked it. The movie was largely carried by two, I think, largely unknown actors in the United States, or they weren't like super famous A-list actors. Every time they ran into a general or somebody, it was played by an A or a B-list actor. I think like Jason Statham, I think.
Jason Statham?
Does he? Or, no, it's not. It's a guy that reminds me of him. The first general guy or whatever.
I don't remember.
And then
I took that movie and went, boop.
Whatever, fuck you. Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, was in the end. I think it was one of the people. There were like three major celebrities that were like in the movie for very short periods of time. But I thought it was interesting that the goal of the casting of those celebs was that like in the wars, you hear about like all the generals and these like huge large than life figures, but the main people.
Importance.
I thought that was a cute, interesting way to cast celebs. But
I'll also point out just about Oppenheimer. I don't hate the movie. There's just so many ways. I mean, I think that you have a lot of valid criticisms, but my overall assessment of like everything together, my emotional experience, I wasn't as pissed off about it. Like, I wasn't like, there's some movies where I might have the exact same criticisms, but just emotionally just be like, oh, there's bullshit. I don't fucking hate it.
Yeah.
It really just depends on the movie and really depends on the person. So.
Okay. I think in this next clip, I can't watch too many clips myself. I'm sorry, Kyla. It's hard, okay? But I think in this next clip, I call out 3 movies that I think every single human being should like, okay?
Like forced to like.
They just should.
Mandatory.
No, like they should watch it, and if they have humanity in them, they'll like these movies, okay?
No humanity if they don't.
Correct. Okay?
All right.
Number 1, fuck it, play the clip. Just play it like God, fuck. Hey, listen to myself. Not this one.
That was the next one.
I know, she put the same one twice. It's Destiny top 3 movies everyone should like. Okay.
All right. Top 3 movies everyone should like. Yeah, it's this
literally
one.
everyone.
Okay.
Everyone should like these 3 movies. Pause it for 1 second.
A major issue.
Hold on.
Right.
I'm hyperbolic in everything I say, okay?
I know.
You know that. Okay. Go ahead. Play this.
I know.
Some of your fans are going to watch this and think I'm like a serious movie commentator with strong opinions, but go ahead. No.
Yeah.
They can't hear it, Lycan.
Oh, good. Such good movies. Number 1, no particular order. This isn't 3 best, 1, 2, 3. Just no. Okay.
Can they hear it now?
Number 1.
Okay.
Okay. Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one.
Pause it.
What a good movie. Great performances.
That's a great movie.
Oh my
God.
Wait.
The first Pirates.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
So I was gonna say, I'm safe for this one because I don't have major issues with it, but I would not put it in my litmus test for a human being list.
What foundation could you not like Pirates of the Caribbean?
Not liking pirates? I don't know.
I don't like pirates.
Maybe you had a bad experience with a pirate. What if you
in the year 2024?
Yeah, Somali pirates.
Okay, if you were part of the recent Houthi abduction and you don't like Pirates of the Caribbean, if you've had a personal bad experience with a pirate, fine. Okay, I'll grant you
What
that.
if you're Amber Heard and you don't like Johnny Depp?
Okay, or if you've got personal bad relationships or experiences with Johnny Depp,
Okay.
fine. Okay, those are the two groups of people.
But I
that are
remember
allowed
liking the movie and I would like to see it again. I love, what's his name? Fuck. I love the director. Gore Verbinski.
Okay.
Got his name.
You guys don't know this, but off camera, the reason why Adam is already poisoned against this movie, I asked him, and it's because he says he's watched the CinemaSins on it like 17 times, and he thinks it's one of the most valid critiques he's ever seen of Pirates. So that's why
That's where I go to for my movie opinions.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you want the best movie opinions, just don't even subscribe to my channel. Just go to CinemaSins. Then cut out the middleman.
Next one.
Well shot.
It's good.
Tight plot.
Yeah, we got it.
Johnny Depp at his best.
Yep.
Side characterization. Just awesome.
Great
Movie. Well, number one. Pirates of the Caribbean, number one. An amazingly fun, awesome, great movie.
Good.
Awesome soundtrack.
Oh, good soundtrack.
Such a
That's
good
Hans Zimmer.
movie.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Making
Was it
real
Hans?
music.
Super
Yeah.
funny.
Not
That's a great
background sound.
theme.
It is. It is.
Well, I won't do the whole thing to
Yeah.
get demonetized, but
That's okay. Yeah.
very memorable.
Wait,
I love when movies had themes.
so real quick, interrupt. Have you seen Gladiator?
Maybe a long time ago. I don't remember.
If you listen to Gladiator and then you listen to this, and I can't remember what came either before or right after.
There's like similarities.
Completely. It's like he just evolved the same soundtrack
Okay.
throughout all the movies.
We shall see.
All right.
I'm
Okay.
suspicious.
Scenes, action and comedy. Action comedy.
shut-
Great movie. Number one.
Next
Number
one.
two. Fucking School of Rock.
Pause it.
The best Jack Black.
I
School
liked
of
that when I
Rock.
was younger, but I think I watched it. I can't see. I'm having trouble remembering if I actually rewatched it as an adult or if my memory just kind of faded with it. If my opinion over time got like mid because I watched it again, or because I just didn't watch it again and didn't have too many memories of it.
You're supposed to be a music guy.
Yeah. No,
You made music.
Yeah, the
and you
music.
don't.
Jack Black music.
It's
I make
rock.
different music.
Oh
I'm more of a
God.
fucking Bright Eyes guy. More of a fucking Regina
Right.
Spektor.
Conor Oberst. He went to my high school.
Oh shit.
Yeah. You're
Omaha.
welcome. I produced him in the future.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Number 3. You're on thin ice. Okay. This
Yeah.
number 3 better be a knockout. Good luck. I don't remember what I say for the third one.
Movie.
Cuties.
Bar none, period. And just an amazingly tight, awesome, wholesome, funny,
Wholesome,
musically
fun.
accurate.
Yeah,
when
the
he's
music
handing
stuff
out the
is cute.
CDs.
I'd be willing to watch it again.
Read all the different performances of the singers, involving all the kids and everything. An amazing movie. Okay? Pirates of the Caribbean, School of Rock, 2 amazing movies. And number 3, fucking, the maybe controversial in terms of anybody should be able to like and appreciate it. I'm sorry, but Ocean's 11. It's just a
Yes.
great
Steven
classic
Soderbergh.
heist movie. Super fun.
I can watch that again.
Matt,
Well, that's one of that's in a particular brand of movies where it spawned a lot of things of people trying to emulate it.
The cast.
Yeah, no, it's a good cast. It's a fun heist type.
Everybody's
Yeah,
at their
that's a-
best.
that's a good
Clooney's,
movie.
everybody is just, oh.
Yeah, it was successful for like what 2 sequels and then like a fucking remake or something. So
Okay.
yeah, that was a
What
good
are your
movie.
3 movies that everybody should like? Humanity Tests.
Oh my god,
Humanity Tests.
You know, there's some I think in 2010 in one of my really early reviews I said something with that like extreme of a perspective. I was like, if you don't like Black Dynamite, you don't have a soul.
Okay.
I avoid saying things like that now, but that is a pretty good litmus test. There's very few people that don't enjoy it. Black Dynamite is hilarious. You know, The Lion King is a really easy, accessible film to all ages. I think that's, well, obviously the 94 film. It's one that, you know, maybe not everybody's into, but I consider it to be like the best kids movie, the best animated movie that's children can watch and adults can find artistic value out of also. And then, what's a good answer? I mean, like, I know this is a weird recency bias, but I guess I'm on the spot for this. Fucking Hundreds of Beavers, number 3. Hundreds of Beavers. Download Hundreds of Beavers. Leave a comment on my channel or my subreddit being like, yo, thanks, Adam, because you made me check out Hundreds of Beavers, and it's the fucking best movie ever. And you don't have to say that dishonestly, because you will say that, because you're going to fucking watch it. Buy the movie. This is not a team with any kind of marketing budget. They've just been posting memes online and doing film festival stuff. And so they did a self-distribution thing. So if this is going to be the one movie all year that you actually buy instead of pirate, Okay, buy hundreds of beavers because they actually need it.
Is this like a comedy or?
It is a comedy.
Okay.
It's like
Does it involve actual beavers or what is the?
Yes. Yeah, there's beavers in it.
Is that like a pussy joke or like is
no?
there actual? Okay.
No, it's not. It's not about pussies. It's about the main character's name is John Kayak, and he becomes the film shows his journey from starting bottom of the barrel and then working his way up to being the best fur trapper in a Looney Tunes black and white silent film, but with lots of sound design and modern editing choices style. Very, very funny, very internet and like meme and gaming kind of conscious and vibes, despite emulating like super old like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and like classic Looney Tunes stuff. It's literally just one of these things where if you're not hyping it up, then you're missing it out. You're missing out. You're missing out if you're not hyping it up.
Okay.
You're not.
Is this like an hour and a half movie? Or is it like a 4-hour movie?
It's an hour 45.
Okay. Hundreds of beavers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Legit. Like it's fucking incredible. The way that it's shot is super low. It was made for like $150,000. But the way that they utilize the filmmaking and the choices that they make and the budgetary considerations are all very intelligent, and especially over the course of the film, they don't show off their best stuff immediately, and you can kind of see things build up, and like over the course of the film it's like, wait, that's actually impressive. Like I thought that this film was like, you know, maybe judging by the first 3 minutes you might think like, oh, this is just kind of an excuse to be lazy, but by the end of the film you're like, this is the least lazy thing that anybody could have done with this format ever. And it's one of those beautiful films where out of its own limitations, it was able to create something really special and unique. Cult classic already. Nobody's going to fucking forget this movie. Everybody's going to love it. I mean, people do love it. I've been pimping it out like crazy. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Semi-serious before I move on to the next thing. There are like two of your top 2 movies that you recommend people for like your big, serious, mindful considerations on everything. If you had to recommend between the Synecdoche in New York or Holy Mountain, which of those two would you recommend? I was going to watch Holy Mountain after Synecdoche in New York yesterday, but I felt like after the Synecdoche movie, I didn't have room in my brain for like another.
It's probably important to give some space, even though they're like almost companion pieces. So the Holy Mountain is just as non-literal, if not more. And it's also about the greater ideas that the film is going for. But I think a bit more universal in a sense, and a bit more timeless, that the average person can probably get more out of the ideas in Holy Mountain. Synecdoche in New York is speaking to almost like a very specific type of like atypical brain, where someone who's going to connect with it is like, oh wow, like this is me. Whereas the Holy Mountain is like, oh wow, this is life. This is spiritual, and I'm not a spiritual person. But in watching that film, it feels like a religious experience. And you feel like almost kind of at one at the universe, and like the concepts of like, you know, nudity being like desexualized in a way, and just things. It's a very colorful film. It's a very ambitious film. Yeah, it looks incredible. It's disturbing. It's out there. It's hilarious. It's so many different emotions, and it touches on so many huge ideas, one after the other. And are you asking me to pick between the two?
I was just curious what you recommend to a person when you're like, I want you to seriously consider watching the film.
If they're a fucking nerd who reads and studies like philosophy, then I would recommend like Synecdoche, New York. If they're a person that does drugs, then The Holy Mountain. The Holy Mountain is a much more trippy film. Okay. Depends on the person, but they're both offering different experiences, but also a lot of the same type of experience that I connect with. And there's no real other movies like those two that I've found. I don't know if I would never find myself in a situation where I'm like, oh, I'm waiting for the next Holy Mountain or Synecdoche, New York. Like, I don't think it's ever going to happen, because it's just what it means to me as well. So.
Okay, that's fair. All right. Actually, before I go on to the next series topic, one more clip. The Dune takes.
The Dune.
The Dune takes.
Oh, the Dune clip.
Can I pee real quick before we start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you. And we're back.
Okay. Roll the Dune clip.
Dune clip.
Roll clip.
Coming right up.
The definitive Dune clip.
All right, here we go, boys.
And it was good. I liked it. And a lot of the criticisms that I had with Dune Part 1 were very much improved for this film. I wound up re-watching Dune Part 1 in preparation for Dune Part 2, partially to see if my opinion would change on the first film, and partially because I just didn't remember that much of it.
Wait, what is the story behind this? Why don't you just like record your face for like a thing? Is it just like easier to fucking record?
Yeah, I mean, it gives it a different personality.
Okay.
There was a point in my life, you know, how I said I was like kind of shy at a certain point. So like every photo I took was just this like dumb, like I'm going to make my face look ugly. So if I try not to be ugly, it won't even matter because I'm trying to be ugly. And then that face just sort of, it was the first one that I put in my videos. And then I just used it as the branding since. And, you know, why fix what ain't broke sort of thing.
Okay, based.
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
I know that people seem to really unanimously love the first film, but it really was not for me, and this was reaffirmed on my second watch.
God. Oh my God, I got to relive yesterday. The dog shitness that is Dune. I was worried, I was like, okay.
I just saw Dune.
Hey, all of chat was mad.
That's fun.
Because you were right. Dune 1 was a horrible movie. It was bad. What is is there an opposite word of Kino? Whatever the opposite of that is.
Cringe.
Yes. It was so many criticisms of Dune, and the first word out of everybody's mouth, okay, but in the book, God, I hated that movie.
Yeah, that happens a lot. That happens a lot in the same way that happens with a lot of biopics. Sometimes people are kind of already going into a movie like attached to an idea or an IP or a person, which is funny because, you know, a lot of times I don't connect with something. People go, you went into it wanting to hate it. So, well, okay, well, if that's a thing, then would you not say that you went into it wanting to like it, that might be a bias or something? Yeah, it's like Oppenheimer, I don't think it's a bad film. I just think that there's a better movie that would appeal to me if it were edited down and some things were changed. There's pieces to a great movie within it, but overall, I mean, you know, I love a lot of Denis Villeneuve's films, but this one just did not. You know, I was willing to watch it for a second time, but it just bounced off my brain again. It doesn't speak to me on a personal level like a lot of my favorite movies do.
Okay, you haven't seen Game of Thrones at all, right?
I saw the first 3 episodes, and then I said to myself, I don't care about anything that's going on. And so I didn't watch the rest of it. And then over time, when people started saying that it went to shit, I was like, well, I'm glad I didn't go anywhere with it.
Wait, you didn't care about anything that was going on? What do you mean by that?
I didn't care about the characters or their dynamics.
Oh my God.
I feel like 3 hour-long episodes is a pretty good chance to give something.
It is, and you should have liked them by then.
Okay, but I'm glad I didn't, because you're probably very disappointed with the show, right? And how it turned out.
Not the first 4 seasons.
Yeah, but then what? It's not an ending.
That's season 2. That's
right?
the second arc. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
I don't think about the last half.
Okay, yeah, but when someone tries to sell me on the idea of watching a long show or any kind of series where there's a cohesive narrative from the beginning to the end, to me, that is basically the equivalent of recommending a movie where it's like, oh, the first half of this movie is fucking amazing, but the second half is just the most dog shit thing to ever exist. And then, you know, like, I don't know. Maybe there's a beauty to that. Maybe.
The end is in the beginning. And sometimes you buy a house that's on fire knowing that, it's better to choose your horrible ending than to.
Well, I think I made the right choice then.
It's actually so interesting to say that, because I was going to I was using that as a point of comparison. I like all the characters in Game of Thrones. You didn't, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, from what I experienced out of the first 3 episodes, it just didn't speak to me. So.
Something that I was going to say that was a problem with Dune, but now maybe you'll have a complete, total different feeling from Dune. Maybe I can use, you've seen, I imagine, Lord of the Rings, right?
Yep.
Do you like the characters from Lord of the Rings?
I love the characters in Lord of the Rings.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That kind of works as a point of comparison then.
Yeah.
For Dune, and I felt this even during Dune 2, I don't know what it is, or I don't know if it's the performances, or if it's the writing, or if it's the directing. But there's a style of like formal line epic delivery that makes me feel totally emotionally disconnected from the characters.
Because it seems kind of like insistent.
So stiff and insistent. Where like if I'm watching Lord of the Rings, I could imagine a tearful moment if almost any of those main characters died. When I was watching Dune 2, like even during the romance scenes between like Zendaya's character and Timothy, whatever,
Tim Cham,
his character, even in the romance scenes, I was like, this is like the stiffest. Like I feel like I'm at like a high school line reading auditioning for a play. I just don't have any emotional connection. Do you think that? Did you feel similar, or do you think that I like have my own feeling there, or what? Like
I feel as though Tim Cham, from what I understand of fans of the book, they say, oh, he looks exactly how the character is supposed to look.
Okay.
I don't think that his performance was one that really sold me on like any intrigue about the character, or perhaps if I had read the source material beforehand and I already kind of knew where things were going. Because like I said earlier with some other films, like sometimes having an idea of what something is before going into it, like a movie on a second watch, it can be a better experience when you're like, oh, I know how it's paced and I kind of know what to expect. And then you're not kind of like disappointed by having different expectations. In that sense, I think that maybe, you know, if I was more familiar with the source material and I had like a better understanding of like the dynamics and the goals and, you know, the characters, then maybe I would have appreciated it more. But even on a second watch for Dune Part 1, as someone who still hasn't read the books, I felt very disconnected, and I felt like Tim Cham's performance got a lot better and his character got a lot better in the second film, and his goals were more clear and the dynamics were more interesting.
It's just strange to me that like it's essentially, my guess is, I've never read the book, but the movies make it feel like Dune is probably like a young adult book. It's like a coming of age type of thing, like a boy becoming a man and all of the trials and tribulations of like taking on more responsibility and shedding your adolescence and childhood, and you know, like right, to have a character who's like the stand-in for that I just like, I don't know if there needed to be moments of like self-doubt or him like, it's like, even if he were to doubt himself, like a moment like that, I feel like it would be conveyed with him like standing in front of a mirror being like, my future, I know not what I must do. It would just be like the stiffest, most like, Jesus Christ. Like, I don't feel like you're a fucking human at any point of this. I feel like his mom wasn't a human. Them talking to each other wasn't human. The only guy that I felt like was somewhat human through that was actually, it was the older guy that like had, like the Morpheus character that had faith in him the whole time. Whatever that character was. I felt like he was like decently, I liked him as like a person, as a character and human being.
You know,
everybody else I felt so stiff.
You know what I feel gives the characters more humanity in Lord of the Rings? Is that the overall film doesn't take itself nearly as seriously.
Sure.
And Dune is the type of film where it's going for a very serious tone, despite, honestly, like a lot of things that kind of happen within it being a little goofy. And perhaps maybe just for me personally, like I would have benefited from a movie that wasn't trying to sell me this like super serious tone. In the second film, I think it pulled it off really well. There's very few films that I would actually say like, this scene is epic. I think that word should be reserved for things that are actually like, holy shit, like insanely constructed, where like all the emotions are hitting and like the, you know, well, they're dodging the rocket or they're shooting the rockets at the helicopter and going behind the cover. Like
that was scene. That was really cool. Definitely agree.
I would never say the word epic.
Yeah. But I also kind of liked, I liked the ending fight. I thought that was cute. Although I think it's weird that they introduced like a super big bad villain, like one half into the movie and then had his like full arc completed. The guy who had no hair anywhere. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Austin Butler.
Yeah.
Or
Austin?
I mean, there were a few.
That's what they called him. No, I'm just
there were a few characters that had no hair, but
yeah,
the one with the black and white fight.
It was the big fight at the end.
I mean, yeah, I think that was the same character.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't feel as though Christopher Walken was fitting in the movie. He was kind of distracting. That was just kind of like a weird casting choice.
Yeah, when I saw it, because that guy is Christopher Walken.
I know.
He very much is everywhere. I don't know if he can shed that. He's like the opposite.
They tried a little.
Did they? Man, wow.
Yeah, they tried to hide parts of his accent, but it still kind of bled through.
Wait, you guys know why they chose him, right?
No. There's a reason. Oh boy.
There's a reason.
God, don't play this stupid thing.
You know what this is.
More
you know
cowbell or something.
Yeah. No. In the song, one of the lyrics is, "If you walk without rhythm, you won't attract the worm." And it's Christopher Walken dancing. This is why they did it.
He's Sandwalken.
It's all for the meme.
Christopher Sandwalken. That might be why, but also, you know, you look at the business of filmmaking. you have to put a lot of recognizable stars in the film just to get it greenlit and just to get your movie made a lot of the time. So, you know, now maybe depending on who Denis works with in terms of studios and distributors, like maybe at this point now he'll have as much power as someone like Christopher Nolan. I think he's getting close to that point. I think that there are people that do care about him as a director enough that whatever movie he makes next, people are going to watch. He put his name in the trailer.
He was the same one that did Blade Runner, right? 2049?
2049,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he's doing very well for himself. And I'm very happy about that because I've loved his work for a while. He had a film called Incendie in like, 2009? I don't remember what year. 2008? But that was incredible. That was one of his earlier-ish ones. Yeah.
I had JJ McCullough here last, and one of the things that we chatted about had to do with the legislation. I think it was Bill C-11 that I think is passed now in Canada. That's trying to make you guys make more content about Canada instead of just
we have we've always had laws that didn't apply to the internet and just applied to television and radio. He probably explained this, where a certain percentage of content that is broadcast on Canadian airwaves or cable stations or any kind of traditional media, a certain amount of it has to be content made from Canadians. But the way that the government defines that is always so silly. So let's say like James Cameron's a Canadian, but the movie Avatar isn't a Canadian movie. It has to be like a percentage, like a specific percentage of the people that made the movie, and like it being shot in Canada, or, you know, a certain amount of the people that recorded this song and blah, 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 to actually fit that very narrow, what is a Canadian thing or a Canadian song. And I understand the reason behind it, just because, you know, like culturally it can help bring out a lot of artists. There's a lot of bands that were just super popular in Canada that never escaped the border that I thought were pretty great. And honestly, you know, as you said earlier, there are instances, I would say, especially with the music industry, where you can kind of force someone to like something, because music, a lot of music that's being played is so formulated and infectious that all you have to do is just play something a few times and then it'll get stuck in someone's head and then they'll like it in a way that might be, you know, it could have been any other artist doing the same sort of thing. I'm unsure. So that passed recently is what you're saying?
I think it was a while ago. Recently, as in like the past few years.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, as somebody that does like, you're involved in a lot of culture, right? Movies represent the nexus of a lot of different types of culture. What does it feel like as a Canadian? And do you feel like a loyalty at all to your country to amplify or review certain things that are Canadian in nature? Do you just not care, and movies to you are, if it all comes from the US or involves US people, you don't care? Do you think that there should be like an onus on Canadian content creators to focus a little bit more on Canadian origin stuff, or should it just be whatever Canadians want to focus on?
I'm not like, I'm the type of person where like I just identify as an individual for most of what I do. I don't identify super strongly in any way with like nationalism or like race or gender. I just feel like me. And maybe that's just like, I don't know, maybe it's a psychological issue, or I have no idea. I can only do so much in terms of being introspective and trying to figure out my own brain. But I would say that I have definitely found value in promoting great lesser known Canadian content because of the fact that half of my audience is from the US and only 10% of my audience is from Canada. And then the 40% is like UK, Australia, Germany. And so there are some things where it never really escaped the border. Kenny versus Spenny was one that I was happy to like promote and share. This weird kids show called Nanoland. They're like a meme on TikTok now, and happy to promote and share that. There's a fantastic show right now called Nirvana the Band the Show. And it's almost kind of like Sacha Baron Cohen style, where there's a narrative, but people are also being pranked in real life. But the pranks aren't necessarily the goal, but like getting real reactions out of people. But there's like real characters, and it's written, but there's also like serendipitous, like just see what happens nature to it. Love Nirvana the Band the Show. Everybody check it out. They're filming a movie now, and there will be a season 3. So those things I find value in promoting. but not because they're Canadian, but because they're things that I know are great that more people in my audience haven't heard of, and I have the ability to share it, like Hundreds of Beavers. It's not a Canadian movie, but, you know, they could use the help, and there are things that I connect with, and things that, you know, if I've been doing this for, like 13 years or something, and I have like 1 million subscribers, and enough people are looking to me for recommendations, then there's probably a good chunk of people that will just like it because they usually like the types of things that I connect with. So it would be a disservice, and you know, what would be the point of having this platform and caring about art if I wasn't helping recommend these smaller things that could use it, that more people will connect with?
Okay.
So
does it bother you with that, like Toronto and Vancouver are like stand-in cities that are oftentimes portrayed as American cities in film? Do you think that they should be more honest about the shooting location, that they could have places where it's like, well, just say this could be Toronto, it doesn't have to be New York? Or do you just not care about that at all?
I find it interesting for sure. There are a couple films where, like, I guess maybe it's not like as explicitly pretending to be something else. Like, I think Denis Villeneuve's Enemy, that was definitely shot in Toronto, but I don't remember if they even specified where they were. I don't remember if it was like important to the story that they were in Toronto. I feel like it's kind of interesting, especially with so much of an audience demographic being American for like just the greater film market. I find it interesting just how many people are used to seeing their cities and their own personal places being represented in film as is. Like the most recent season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, he goes to Atlanta, and I've been in Atlanta a bunch. I'm like, oh, I recognize that thing. Mm-hmm. And I kind of thought like, oh, it must kind of interesting just being in like a major American city and having that like portrayed in so many different shows and different films. There are films that exist and shows that exist that not only don't hide the fact that it's in Canada, but also kind of use it towards its advantage. And I think most of the ones where that's successful are kind of like comedic approaches, like Nirvana, the band, the show. It's like definitely, it's a Canadian show for sure. But I don't, I'm not necessarily offended when a movie is shot in Vancouver and then pretends to be like Chicago or something. It's just a part of the industry. There's tax subsidies in British Columbia, and so that incentivizes a lot of productions to shoot there for cheaper because they get back the tax subsidies. So
okay.
What, in your opinion, is the best movie that's a debut from a director?
Fucking Synecdoche, New York. That was his first directorial debut. Like that was the first time he ever directed anything as a feature. So
is that true?
Yeah.
Wait,
he was just a writer
beforehand. 2008
beforehand.
movie?
Yeah, he was just a writer beforehand. So Eternal Sunshine he wrote, and then
okay.
Yeah, so like that would be very hard for me to think of another example unless you're saying like someone who's literally never made anything, but I'm not sure.
All right.
Hundreds of Beavers is a directorial debut, I think.
Get Out was a directorial debut.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like people that have done other things in the industry, right? Mm-hmm. I think most successful debut features are ones where it's like, okay, they've worked in the industry in some form or have some sort of comprehension or experience.
Here's just a random question. When an actor gives a bad performance, do you think it's generally the fault more of the actor or the director?
There are some actors where they seem almost director-proof in the sense that even in films where every other actor gives a bad performance, which I would say is indicative of a bad director, where everyone's giving a bad performance, someone like Jake Gyllenhaal will still manage to be okay. Mm-hmm. And he's not even like my favorite actor, but I very much noticed about that. Like there's so many films where it's like, wow, everybody sucks in this but you. And they're all big name or they're all just as much like experience. He seems very director proof in that sense. So he, you know, as an actor, it would appear as though he cares a lot about his roles and he does a lot of his own like research and rehearsal in trying to understand his own character and understand the lines in the script as he delivers them. But yeah, so there's the worst directors are ones where every single performance is bad in terms of directing actors. And then the best directors are, you know, like Michelle Haneke, Michael Haneke. And he can put like 20 kids in a movie and none of them are bad.
Okay.
Like The White Ribbon has so many child performances. It's like, wow, how did you fucking do that? Child actors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 3.
All right. Hit me. Next one. We've got, this is from Ambient Wave. Classic great movies you find that are overrated.
Overrated? Well, that's a, you know, I don't know how we define overrated. Like,
well, the audience and everybody says it's really good, but you watch it, you think it's as good.
Something like, I don't know, is you think Pulp Fiction is overrated?
So overrated.
Oh, yeah?
I think it's a solid movie.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's really overrated.
Okay. I don't know, like Citizen Kane, I don't feel is in my top movies of all time. It's great, groundbreaking film, but so if people are constantly referring to that as the best movie ever made, then I would have to say it's overrated.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Couple more quick ones. Please Glaze Over Poor Things, best movie 2023. This is from Jupiter Core for $10.
Did you watch it?
Nope. Did you?
Yep. Love it. Okay. I also think it's the best movie of 2023.
What's it about?
Oh boy. Plot-wise, it's almost kind of like fucking dicey, because there's a lot of people that criticize the film in a way where they're kind of ignoring the greater themes and kind of like what's the word? Not necessarily misrepresenting, but like missing the forest for the trees and giving like a very narrow summary of
cuties.
It's like Cuties, but it doesn't feature little girls doing those things, right? So
no longer interested.
But it's a weird character where a mad scientist in almost kind of like a Frankenstein way, but way less taking itself seriously. It's a comedic film as well. He takes a woman's fetus and the woman dies and the fetus brain goes into her brain, and then you see like a baby character, but portrayed by Emma Stone, an adult, kind of like grow up and like discover herself, and it's almost kind of like a Pinocchio adventure movie, but it's so style heavy, and the score is like one of the craziest scores ever in terms of how it's presented and the emotions and it feeling like new sounds, which I never really feel often about a movie, and it matching the tone and it like transforming into something else. Incredible cinematography. That's probably Mark Ruffalo's best performance. Glad Emma Stone won the Oscar. Not to say Lily Gladstone didn't deserve it, but yeah, that was my favorite movie of last year for sure. It's crazy. Okay, I would love to see that one again. I love movies that do weird, unique, interesting things, and they're for a purpose. And you can look at the choices and be like, wow, that fits. You know, extreme cinematography choices, extreme differences in the types of lenses in a way that, like, even if you're not a person that feels regularly conscious of the types of lenses that are used in movies, you'll notice it still. It's like that extreme in terms of how it's shown.
Okay. How many movies do you try to watch a week?
Do I watch a week?
Do you try to watch like one a day or like 3 or 4 a week? Or
it's really just, it's depending on whether or not I'm at a film festival. It's depending on whether or not I'm in the middle of like trying to get an editing project done. Like if an editor sends me something and I need to go over it and make some tweaks, it's like, okay, well, this video should probably be published. So then I might not watch a movie that day. If that's what I'm doing, I'm going over that. But I mean, on average, several movies a week at least. Like, I do a bi-weekly podcast like every 2 weeks, and there's always one major film recommendation, and then we usually talk about like 1 or 2 other movies that came out in theaters in each episode. And then on top of that, like as I'm trying to go through my movies for 2016 list and get that wrapped up, and then film festivals that I go to, a lot of them I'm watching like 3 to 5 movies per day at those sometimes.
Like movies for 2016?
2016, yeah. So when people create their best of the year lists, what you most often see is people that, you know, in December of 2023, they would be like, here's the best movies that I saw from 2023. I'm not satisfied with that personally, because there's so many films that I connect with that are foreign, independent, don't have huge distribution budgets, and won't be available in any form that technically had a 2023 release, but I'm not able to see yet because they don't have actual proper distribution. And so I always wind up doing my best of the year lists at least a couple years after, just to make sure that I'm actually able to see everything that could make my list within the year. Now, because I've gotten bogged down with so many other projects, obviously 2016 is quite a ways away. And also the fact that I now am, well, at least for this year, I was trying to include like miniseries and like some television shows, and it just wound up being like way too much of a impossible task. So now I have to like cut some of these things out of my list that I haven't seen yet. But essentially, you know, I'll just dedicate if I've got no other editing projects and no other film festivals going on, then I'll just dedicate the entire week of just like, okay, I'm just going to watch everything on this list. And then anything that makes my short list, I watch a second time and decide if it makes the actual list. And then the lists themselves are never 10 movies. They're like, I think the last one I made had 40 movies on them. But there really is that much great, worthwhile stuff to check out in a year, if not more. And that's what people don't often realize.
So do you are you like just consistently 8 years then behind on everything?
No,
or okay.
No, I've just, well, because I also, when I started doing it, the first one I did was 2009 when I started my channel in 2010.
Okay.
And so in that same sense, I've not only been going forward in time, but I've also kind of been trying to go backward in time. So I did my 2008 list. So I did my 2008 list last, then I'm going to go 2016, and then I'm going to go 2007. And then depending on, so I have to manage my time better. It's becoming like it's taken its own form.
Especially because you still have to watch Band of Brothers too, right?
Yeah, I got to watch that 10 times.
Twice, at least, okay. Roll the good cinematography clip.
Good cinematography clip.
We're going to watch you talk about what makes a movie good for you.
All right.
Like they explained it and then explained it again, even though it's an R-rated movie and theoretically it's not children watching it. What happened in the first movie again? It was a king of comedy and it was a taxi driver, right? Okay. It was all right. It was good. Just not great. Loved his performance.
Is that the right clip?
That's the first one.
Oh, okay. That was me talking about the first Joker.
Yeah.
The Joker baby.
That was the first clip. I've watched these. The second one doesn't. It just is you talking about Harley Quinn. When you think of what makes a good film, what you talk about it like how you fundamentally when you walk away from a film, I think from what you told me the other day, you like something that makes you feel a particular thing. Like
not a particular thing, but something.
Like it makes you feel something. I mean, right?
Yeah.
When you're evaluating like what you think is a good film or not, how do you figure out like these are things that I think make for a good film that make me feel a particular thing? These are things that don't. Like, what do you think are?
I don't think it's difficult to gauge having like a personal strong connection or experience with a film as a whole, or its ideas, or a scene from a film, or a performance in a film, or the music in a film. In terms of like my own engagement, it's pretty night and day, right? So if it's a movie that I don't connect with, I might be zoning out and start thinking about my taxes or something. Or if it's a movie that I'm super into, it feels like 20 minutes has gone by and I'm like, just, wow, the whole movie happened and I absorbed so much about it and I'm thinking about it on different layers and I'm appreciating it in different ways. So on the personal level, it's not really something that's difficult to judge, and I don't think that it should be for anybody. On an artistic level, there's certain... Everybody can judge a film differently in terms of what attributes they value over others. So if somebody is really, really super into like just performances alone and doesn't really have much of an understanding or appreciation for or comprehension of something like cinematography or lenses or framing or music, right? There's so many people that are just music illiterate, and most of those people are still able to feel an intended emotion, but they might not understand why something like the score in Poor Things is like particularly special, or they might not understand the choices behind some of the music being made. So everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses. I'm not like a, genius, academic, but, master on every single one of these, but they're things that I feel like I find some level of appreciation for, whether that be personal connection. And it's just like, oh, I like seeing this type of thing because I like sci-fi horror, or I like, it's a furry movie or something like that. Like, oh yeah, this is great. Versus this is an actual achievement and I can respect the artistry and the choices that went into it that might not even necessarily connect with me personally, but I can at least respect in a way that it's like, okay, yeah, I see what you did there. Props to you. Not my thing, but like we can't deny the talent going into this choice or how something was pulled off.
When you're watching something, is it ever like a cerebral or intellectual engagement in that you're like considering exactly what's happening, or are you purely going by emotion or intuition? So like, for example, in that Everything Everywhere All at Once movie, one thing that I noticed that's very cute is that during some transitions of mood from one scene to the next, they are physically changing the aspect ratio of the film, where they'll open the aspect ratio, close it, like, and I'll notice it's like, oh, that's really cute. Like, more dramatic aspect ratio, more epic scene. Like, I like that. Would you watch something like that and think that, or would you be like, just like, oh, this feels more epic? And when you finish watching, you'll go back and think like, okay, well, why did this feel epic?
I'm usually, a lot of the choices that are made during my, like, as I'm experiencing it in real time, I'll pick up on like choices like aspect ratio. Like, there might be some where I'm like, okay, on a second watch, I didn't notice that. A lot of my favorite movies that exist, like every one of my favorite movies, are ones that I continue to find new layers and levels of appreciation the more times that I watch them and the more that I engage with them. So it really depends on the film, but in terms of my experience, it's always a combination of the two that's going into how I feel about a movie and my rating for a film. I would never rate a film a 10 that I didn't have some sort of like
strong
genuine
emotional
love for. And I don't think I would also rate a 10 that only consisted of a genuine love, but no, like, not being impressed by anything, right?
Okay. When you're watching like Synecdoche in New York for the first time, are you ever thinking in that movie, like, what is the director trying to say here? Like, considering it that way as you see something on screen, or are you just like absorbing it and watching it, and then that's something you'd consider afterwards?
No, there is that thought process that happens, but it depends on the film, and there's certain types of films that beckon you to analyze it more.
Okay.
The first time I watched Synecdoche in New York, it starts out almost like a normal narrative until it starts like the universe crumbles essentially, and you're forced to interact with the film in a completely different way than you were before. So in that sense, I probably wasn't thinking as much about, the choices at the beginning. Like, maybe there's some subconscious choices that were being picked up. Like, okay, what feels like time's moving really fast here at the beginning. Like, this is odd. Like, this is unlike the other Charlie Kaufman films that I've seen. But yeah, it depends on the movie, and it depends on what it feels the movie is going for and how much it really feels as though there's anything that could be uncovered or engaged with, right? When I'm watching a fucking Judd Apatow film, like just really bland comedy, every single shot is just same framing, shot, reverse shot. They cut back between two characters just shooting the shit, and it's just A, B, A, B, A, B. When I'm watching something like that and it's so familiar and I'm like, there's a billion of these, and I know enough about the director, and I know enough about the audience, and I know enough about what it's going for or what people are generally feeling about it, I might not be looking for fucking clues, and I might not be engaging with it in a way of like, oh, what's the meta layer of what it's trying to say about society? I might just have my brain just not even intentionally just fucking turned off and not absorbing it, and just it bouncing off me in certain ways. So yeah, it's just a case-by-case basis, and just when you've seen enough movies and especially enough about what types of things that connect with you and the ways in which films can tell a story or not tell a story or tell an idea or communicate something, the more that you've done that, the more that you'll be able to assess when, or that you'll naturally just be interested in engaging with it more, in a sense.
Okay, random quick question. There might be an easy answer to this. I'm just curious. Why was the lady the wallpaper in the beginning of that film? Is there a reason, do you think, or what do you think?
Yeah, because it's going for the ideas of people have lived in the same places before you.
Okay.
And the remnants of other people that have existed living entire lives are still things that exist in the background, and implanting it in a very subtle way where the entire first sequence of that movie, like the entire first 30 minutes, there's so many things where it seems like the aesthetic goal is to make you think that something's off. And that in of itself, even if what's happening narratively seems pretty easy to follow, when there's enough things that subconsciously maybe even that you're not directly paying attention to or directly absorbing, there's enough things that seem off about something that it can trick your brain into, maybe subconsciously or maybe consciously if you're thinking about it, into wanting to peer into it more. There's tons of things like that within that sequence about, the way that time is flowing and like the dates and the editing. And there's a lot of imagery of, there'll be like series of like 3 objects, but you'll see like the imprint on a wall of one, and one is missing. And it's like, okay, that's a very intentional choice to make your brain feel there's some sense of unease to be like, wait, something's wrong, even if you're not consciously noticing it the first time. So it can serve more than one purpose. It can be an aesthetic, like, oh, what is that, and make you want to analyze and dissect the film more. But I think that there also is like, it ties into the themes of past people and past lives and things being with you, even if you didn't know that they were with you, even if you weren't conscious about it, something's there. And if I remember correctly, like the woman in the wallpaper kind of looks like Ellen, if I remember correctly too. So
possibly, I think her back is turned to the camera. So, but I'm guessing we don't have to go into this. I'm guessing you probably think that like sequels and sequels and sequels is probably not a healthy direction for movies to go, where we're relying on
it's a lack of faith in artists, because the business decision is entirely reliant on the IP, whether it's a pre-existing IP or a direct sequel to just something that was just created, or soft reboot. A lot of things either don't get funded if there's not Scarlett Johansson in it, or if it's not a pre-existing IP, or if it's not Christopher Nolan. And then all these other movies that don't even need that much money. We could have a mid-budget movie and you wouldn't have to make back $1 billion to be profitable. A lot of these movies just aren't funded, which is unfortunate.
Okay. So without looking at necessarily like sequels, but looking at borrowing IPs, do you have strong feelings about all of the, I don't know about to say explosion of, but it seems like more popular recently, like video game stuff.
Oh.
So I think
like video game IPs?
Yeah, the Last of Us was a really popular thing. The Fallout show now was pretty big. Arcane, the anime from League of Legends, was like really popular when it came out. Do you think that this is like an okay thing? Do you think an adaptation of video game stuff to like miniseries or movies, is that like a thing you want to see more of, that you're interested in, or you're kind of like, whatever,
it's whenever I view things in terms of whether or not something should be made, it's really just a question of, is the director and the people directly involved with producing the film, are they actually fans of the IP, or are they just trying to capitalize on the name of something? Eli Roth's Borderlands is going to fucking suck. That's going to be ass. It's going to, like, I don't believe that even if he is a fan of the game, he's just not that talented of a person. He's not that creative of a person.
Jesus.
Yeah, sorry. I know he's your favorite director.
One of mine. Yeah. But okay.
Yeah, it really just, I think there's space to be able to make good video game IPs, or translations from video games into film or miniseries. I did like the Last of Us show. I thought the game was better, but it's cool that it is now being accessible to people, older people that would never touch a video game and still experience a lot of what made the original story powerful and effective. So as long as the original media that you care about still exists and isn't being, replaced or anything like that, then that's fine.
Okay. I don't mind the medium jumping. I think we talked about this a couple days ago. One thing that worries me a little bit, though, is it does get annoying sometimes when mediums try to be other mediums that they're not, and then they lose something special about the particular medium they're from. So video games that, in my opinion, try too hard to be movies.
David Cage games.
Is that
he sucks?
Wait, which ones does he make?
Heavy Rain.
Oh,
Beyond Two Souls.
Okay. For me, it was playing through some of the Far Cries, where you'll have quick time events where you can't even fail them. Like it'll be a knife fight, and your character will be like, it'll say like push X, and if you don't, it'll just stop here, and then you push the button, and then it does the next thing, and I'm like, oh my god! Like,
the fake player interaction where if you have any bit of skepticism over it, it ruins the illusion. There's a lot of story choice games that do that exact same thing, where they pretend there's like an actual web of choices that will lead to somewhere else. But then you try, it's like, okay, when I'm playing one of those and I'm not like, in love with the characters anyway, and I kind of just want to see what's going to happen, I kind of want to like test the game in a way. I'll choose the option that I think the devs don't want me to do. Like, okay, they don't think I'm going to pick this. They don't think I'm going to pick this. And then I choose it, and then the character will be like, wait, are you sure? And then just do the other option.
You back in. Like, stop
somebody else
around.
saved me right into, it's just like, okay, bullshit. Don't even put that option there. That's fake.
Yeah, I really don't like I don't like the vast majority of like choose your own adventure games, because they either all eventually loop back into 2 or 3 different endings. I guess people argue Mass Effect kind of does this. It's like 3 different explosions for Mass Effect 3.
The third game had a lot of issues.
Yeah, either that or you have like genuinely separate endings, but it's like they're all kind of sucky, and it's like I would rather just have like one really well done, consistent story. But I know that different people have like vastly different opinions about what that would look like.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Mass Effect had a lot of room to still have different consequences, but more or less have the same ending. I just think that every one of the endings that they had for that third game was ass.
Sure. Okay.
So,
do you when you think of people like Neil Breen,
love him. Have you seen a Neil Breen film?
Is he the one with the horrible whisper ghost thing? Am I making this up?
Whisper ghost thing. You're gonna have to I mean, that might describe something in one of his films, but it might not. I don't know what you're thinking of.
I don't know. Fuck. Kyla put this question in. Is he the one where I've seen the trailer for his film and it's like a joke movie? Are you joking right now, or does he make real films?
That is one of the most important questions about art. Is the fact that Neil Breen,
this guy, there's like the ghost thing on the screen. It's like, woo.
So he is one of the most important artists working today.
Yeah.
And even though his films are to a large part inaccessible to the average audience member, and there's a certain type of person that's going to really enjoy like a so bad that it's good film.
Okay.
He is making them in such a consistent way where he is unfazed by the fact that like most of the people in his audience and most of the people showing up to his films are kind of laughing at him more than they're laughing with him in a sense. Every other artist that's made a so bad that it's good film, like James Wynn of Birdemic or Tommy Wiseau of The Room, immediately once they got any sort of sense that that's what they created, they pretended as if they were in on it. And then they would make another movie where it's like, see, I'm pretending to be funny too. And they're just terrible because it's not compelling when you fail at making an unserious movie. It's compelling when you're failing at making a serious, earnest film. And he's continued to be earnest about his art. He's continued to make films that speak to him clearly, that are things that he wants to communicate. And he's clearly making what he loves. And I love these fucking films. If you're going to start anywhere with Neil Breen, Fateful Findings is my favorite.
That's the one I was thinking. Right.
Twisted Pair is his second best. Start with those. Anybody who wants to watch Neil Breen, they're great to watch with friends. They're great to have like a drinking game with. Yeah, I can't recommend him enough. He's another artist that I've just been consistently pimping out. And it's a different type of artist than, some of the other ones that I've been recommending. But
do you feel like Steve Seagal is the same as this guy? Or no? Okay.
No, he's the director, writer, and star of his films. And you see his voice. So even in a film like Synecdoche, New York, or a film like The Holy Mountain, or any one of my favorite films, I love experiencing art where I can experience the person through their art. And this is no different, even if what they're showing has a lot of things that are mistakes and a lot of things that are bad. But there is, there's something to be said about it in the sense that, is his art any less legitimate or impactful than any other art that exists? Like, seriously.
Okay. Do you feel the same way about, who the Shags are?
I love the Shags.
Okay.
I fucking rock out to the Shags. I have some of their songs memorized. I could play along.
Okay.
Shags is dope. Yeah. The Shags is unique because you never see that with music.
That's fair.
It's really difficult to make so bad that it's good music. Did you hear the backstory behind the Shags?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
You guys can look that up. We're not going to jump into that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, final big topic, I think.
Yes.
How do you feel about the politicization of movies? Macro, micro, and then you can speak. So macro-wise, obviously talking about the politicization of anything is kind of silly because, like you said, what is art? Well, what is politics? Everything is kind of political, whether you're bucking a social norm or reinforcing it. You're always doing something in some cultural context. It seems like if I point to, as an example I use a lot, if I look at like women characters in films, it feels like in the past there have been movies that have women leads who do a really good job at that, but it felt like it wasn't the explicit goal of the director or the artists to make that like a political statement. They just happened to be there. So like Sigourney Weaver as Ripley in Alien, or Kill Bill, and like these are like good examples of lead females who are just in awesome movies doing awesome things. And then you've got other movies where it feels a little bit more intentional. So whatever the woman is that the Quartering hates in Captain Marvel, he's made like 50 million, 50 million videos about her. Or the like Star Wars, the new trilogy or whatever with that female lead, where it feels like a little bit more of a political statement.
Yeah.
So you've got movies that feel like they're trying to make stronger political statements in our current culture. And then you've got now this kind of like YouTube movie reviewer culture that's very politically oriented.
Yeah.
Where there are certain movies that I watch and I could tell just because there's like a gay character or just because there's a type of character, I know there's someone on YouTube that's gonna be really mad about it.
Yeah.
What do you think about that environment in general?
It's a funny new environment that we're in, and I find it kind of amusing that like a lot of the people that scream the loudest about not wanting politics in their films are the ones injecting, like making them explicitly political with how they're engaging with it, especially with the amount of these channels that make 10 videos in a row about a movie that's not even out yet, but just like the person who directed like a lesbian woman, and she said that she liked Frozen because there wasn't like a male love story. It's like, wait, that's not blah, 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 right? And then you search for like a trailer of like one of these new, it's always like Star Wars and Marvel, and it seems like most of the films that they experience and their entire language of how they view film is only through the lens of Star Wars and Marvel, which is also another frustrating thing because, you know, maybe not all of them, but definitely some of them, you know, they have this sort of mantra of like, oh, movies are bad now, when in reality also there's a bit of like, you know, a perception bias because films from the past, you know, if you look on Wikipedia and you just look at the entire list of movies released within the year, like notable movies released within the year, go to like 1996, right? You'll find a bunch of shit that was just trash, forgotten, cynical, lazily made, no personality, no soul. But we remember the ones that are special. And just like the films in this generation, we remember the ones that are special. We remember the films that connect with people in ways that break the norms, or ways that you know, might even be reinforcing some norms, but do something that people really, really jive with. So in the sense of, I guess, these characters kind of existing, I find it amusing that when I search for like a new Star Wars or Marvel thing, oftentimes now first result is Ben Shapiro's
take
response
on the Barbie
to it.
movie, like
and
hour and a half, and then critical
and then I look at it
and
and
the
I'm
quartering,
like,
and
I'm like, you didn't even really talk about the trailer. You took an article from Pink News where the whole focus of that LGBT website was to say, here's all the people involved on this show that are LGBT. And it's like 6 people out of hundreds that are working on it. He reads that article and then uses that and presents this to his audience. And the implication is like, this is going to be the gayest show ever. And they're trying to turn your kids gay and trans, right? Everybody, he's reading an article, and it would seem like if you just saw his content and the same people in his sort of ecosystem commenting on these things, you'd get an entirely different impression about exactly what is happening in the industry, or exactly what, or how big of an issue these things are, when it's like, okay, well, one Star Wars show out of how many are there? 8,000 or whatever. It's like, okay, you have a lesbian woman directing it. There's a trans person in it. There's a non-binary person in it. They maybe get like 10 seconds of screen time. We have no idea. Maybe one of them's a main character. Is that really like a thing to be making like 10 videos about before it's out, and acting and really drumming up your audience and getting everybody kind of in this weird sort of like, they're after you and they're after your kids sort of mentality? I think that that's a little historically harmful, maybe not a great sort of vibe for people to be in, especially when there's a lot of like crazy, impressionable people that these people kind of know are probably in their audience too. I don't think it's doing a lot of good, but everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And there's a lot of these films that wind up sucking anyway. You know, you wouldn't catch me being like, oh, whatever what most of these shows that they take issue with are just shit shows anyway, and shit movies, but not because there's a trans person in it, and not because there's a woman in it. It's because they're creatively bankrupt, and the exact same ideas I was talking about earlier, where they have no faith in artists and they have faith in IPs. That's exactly what they're doing. That's why all of these shows that they're doing this with are Marvel and Star Wars, is because historically they can look at certain demographics. They can look at the fact that there is an appetite to want to see more women in movies. There is an appetite for a certain portion of the crowd to want to see more people of color in movies. There's some appetite that exists to want to see representation of trans people or non-binary. That's not happening to every show. It's happening to a small fraction of shows, some of those being pre-existing IPs of big names that, like, I guess a lot of people are very emotionally attached to in a nostalgic way. But it's the Barbie movie was the highest grossing film of last year. It beat the Mario movie. That was like the most feminist woke shit ever. And so obviously there's an appetite for it. But what the Barbie movie did well is they trusted in actual artists like Noah Baumbach, like Greta Gerwig, right? These two that created this film from their own ideas and were allowed to essentially do what they wanted with, I'm sure, some notes, but not necessarily just trying to recreate the success of like, let's do Star Wars, but it's a woman, or let's do Marvel, but it's a girl power movie. It's the creative bankruptcy that is causing these issues, not the fact that there's any sort of representation.
I think that's what drives me the craziest when it comes to like the very political analyses of really of anything. It can be it can even be of political things when people have their particular lens they look through. But yeah, like if you make a Ghostbusters movie with an all-male cast and the movie kind of isn't that great, like Ghostbusters 2, like nobody would ever say, well, they f***ed up because it was an all-male cast. But then if you make like the all-female Ghostbusters and you're like, well, this movie wasn't good, it's not because they didn't have good ideas or because it was, you know, artistically bankrupt. It's because, well, it was because they picked women. And it's like, would men starring in that movie have made it any better? Like, is that really what we're running with? It's super frustrating.
I think I would like to see a world where people are more self-conscious of their own biases in a way where I don't think the average person realizes just how much more they'll notice something that is not something that they're already used to. Because that is essentially a lot of criticism, and a lot of conservative criticism, is that something is kind of challenging an existing norm or challenging an existing tradition. And so, you know, is it as much of a political statement for there to be a gay kiss as a straight kiss? It depends on who you ask. If we had if society was entirely differently up until this point and we were in a different culture where there wasn't like a stigma directly associated with one over the other, then it would be perceived less politically. So I don't know. It's like, maybe it's just an issue of just trying to look at things like, you know, there's no true objectivity, but attemptedly more objective, or try to look past your own biases, or try to maybe think like, am I upset about this because it's different, or is it being political because it's different? Or is there something more deep-rooted? Is there like an actual reason towards why I should be feeling upset about this film? Is it about the artistry? Like, I think that's the most important factor, is the artistry. And that seems to often get ignored by a lot of these channels in this particular ecosystem that have made things way more political from their own content than the things that they criticize.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And then I wonder sometimes, like, maybe people are making political movies like this, if they are doing it spitefully or whatever, literally just because of your reaction to it.
Like, no, because it's free promotion now.
Yeah.
It's free promotion now.
And then even like some of the questions that were involved in this, like why did this character have to be gay? And it's like,
why they have to be straight? I don't know. Like,
why is anybody gay?
Depends on the
it's just like
depends on the writer, and it depends on, you know, what they're trying to do. If you don't connect with that sort of thing, like, no one's forcing you to watch the film.
Yeah. Or
and there's like, it's not like there's a shortage of like
straight
heteronormative straight white characters in huge IPs. It's not like you can't find that, right? So
do you feel similarly for people that read cultural commentary, political themes and everything? I'm reminded of, I'm really bringing this question up about Dune 2. A lot of people read Dune 2 as like I say a lot of people, but there's really just one person from the Dune part who made a tweet about this. It's like a love letter to the Palestinians or whatever. Or I saw a lot of people trying to take like Star Wars and be like, you guys really think that, you know, the rebels, that would represent America? Like, this is blah, blah, blah. Do you feel like movies and the way people view them now is more political than, I guess, you felt like movies were like 20 or 30 years ago? Or
I mean,
do you think it's always been like about that?
Well, here's the thing: is anything you view on fucking Twitter is going to be that way, right? I think it's the lens and the format that we view conversations through entirely. Like, in that sense, it's not just films; it's literally everything has been hyper politicized. So I don't think that's a statement necessarily about the film industry or necessarily even film viewers. I think that's more a statement about Twitter and just internet brain people. And sure, there is room for some commentary about how you relate to a film politically, even if Dune is a story that was made, I don't remember what year the original book came out. It was pre-80s anyway, or maybe in the 80s. But, you know, even if you're attaching that onto current day political events, there's nothing wrong with that. But I guess I would be careful before, like, attributing intent to the artists in that way. I guess if you're just trying to be accurate. But there's no harm in, like, I guess, having that connection with it, if that's the type of way you want to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you you started, well, not started, you made music a long time ago.
Yes.
You're working on music now.
Yes.
What is the feeling of, you've read the quote, like, the critic isn't the man in the arena, or whatever the fuck, you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
Fuck, I know you've heard this fucking quote.
I'm sure I've heard.
I know you've heard this.
I'm
quote.
sure I've
like,
heard it paraphrased
the man
in a billion different ways.
The one who risks everything and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
and
like,
it's supposed to be
critics are failed artists.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
like critics don't do anything; they just sit there and criticize. It's the guy that actually makes.
Well, here's the thing. Like, Quentin Tarantino was a guy that rented a bunch of movies at the video store. He releases his own best of the year list. He releases his own criticisms. That's not his job, right? But he's just a person passionate about movies, and he makes his own. In that sense, I'm passionate about movies. I'm passionate about music. I feel like it's easier for me to produce music than movies, because that's something that, my entire album was just self-produced. Like, I can record this piano track. I can record this violin track. I can just literally do the entire thing myself.
When you go to make something like that, are you consciously thinking at every turn, like, I have criticized this soundtrack because I thought this or that instrument played poorly, and you're like, fuck, people are gonna, you don't think about that at all?
And that helps me to be a person that, like there's a bunch of people that look at my content and be like, oh, you don't know what it's like to create something, or what. If you had someone criticize your thing, you'd feel upset. No, I actively engaged with the criticism of the album that I produced. I know that the mixing isn't perfect. I did it most of it myself. I didn't have a producer, right? I know that there's some tracks where maybe there's like one too many instruments, but this has informed how I approach my next project, which is, the next album I create. I do want to have a producer. I do want to have other voices. And so I think that criticism is useful. And sure, maybe there's some people that will look at my music video or look at like one of the songs that I made and being like, this is bullshit, or like, I didn't like this chord progression, or like, oh, this sucks. Or, maybe some people that are just like bitter and butthurt because I criticized the Mario movie. But it's up to the artists themselves to look at criticism and filter through what is valuable criticism that you can learn from versus what is criticism of just, oh, the person didn't get the movie or the person didn't get the song. It's not for them. In the same way that a lot of my favorite films, a lot of my favorite musicians, like Bright Eyes, like, they're not trying to be playlist music. They're not trying to appeal to everyone in a massive way. They're doing things in a radically honest, radically personal way that connects with me. And the type of things that I create are the same way, in the sense that I'm fine with less people connecting with it if the end result is that those people have a stronger connection. And it speaks to them on a personal way that they're getting something out of my music that is not being offered by anyone else, because I'm doing something that reflects myself and, I guess, a part of themselves. By the way, so you're familiar with my music. If anybody listening wants to check it out, it's called An Unkindness, AN_UNKINDNESS. I filmed a music video for the song Anything. It's a lot of sad music. It's a lot of therapeutic music for me. Just me trying to get over different things in my life. And I think the best track on the album is Acceptance. That's the closing track. So if you listen to one, I guess that would be it. And fun factoid, Blondie, the band Blondie, covered one of my tracks, Fragments. They used it as the closing track on their most recent album, Pollinator, which was really cool. So shout out to Debbie Harry and Chris Stein for making that happen. That was awesome. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Thank you.
Are you working on, would you ever film like a movie thing?
I would love to. And I have a plethora of thoughts and notes that I send myself and back up in different places of potential ideas for a movie concept, or potential ideas for just a character, or the way I want to shoot a scene, or the way I would practically do something. My biggest issue that I've come across when thinking about creating a film is the fact that I am currently in this cycle of dedicating so much time to my existing YouTube things, where I don't have like a huge chunk of money that I can just kind of like take a big break and, like, especially because I'm trying to live in two places at once right now, visit my boyfriend in the States. I'm at a weird point in my life where I'm like trying to figure out ways to better monetize what I'm doing, to maybe give myself a bit more of a cushion, and be able to tackle on larger projects like that. Also, tendonitis in my wrist. It's kind of hard to like type up a script, but I'm trying to fix that. And I'm, doing a lot of physical therapy, and I have a personal trainer, and blah, 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 blah. So there's hurdles in the way. It's not impossible. I'm just in a weird, maybe when I turn 35, I'm going to have a crisis and be like, I got to do it now. And then just fucking stop making YouTube videos and be like, I don't care if I have to change my lifestyle. But something's going to happen at some point. Right now, I think another album is probably just the most realistic goal in terms of things that I could do where I'm expressing a true part of myself and being happy in some way.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, if you make one, I'll be sure to criticize it since you didn't endorse the 3 movies that I think are essential human experience movies. If people are looking for your stuff, where can they find you? What big project are you working on? What do you want to plug?
YMS on YouTube. I made a dank-ass video about Kimba the White Lion. I debunked a 25-year-old animation conspiracy by watching an anime that apparently most people didn't. There was a lot of bullshit. If you like kind of internet drama almost type stuff and skepticism and well-researched things, I would say that would be my best video for that sort of thing. And since you're the type of people that like seeing live streams, please check out, I have a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/YMS Plays, spelled exactly how you would think. And I'm on kick.com/YMS. And if you're looking at watching movies and you might want to do that in a social way, you might want some company, some commentary, I do movie watch-along streams in both of those places, and the YouTube version of that is youtube.com/@YMS-watch-alongs. You can find the archives of all these watch-alongs I've done. Basically, the time code shows at the bottom of the screen. All you have to do is just click play when I do the 3, 2, 1 countdown, and it's like you're watching a movie with a commentary track, and if you hit the bell, then you'll know when I start a stream. You might see a movie live. You're just responsible for finding your own copy. Got a gaming channel. YMS Plays on YouTube, and then, yeah, that's about it. And unkindness for the music again, but yeah, I have too many things that I'm doing. Everything I plug is a fucking novel at this point.
You need do you just have like a website, like a link tree or something where people can click off and find all your stuff?
I thought about creating a link tree and then I didn't, and I don't remember where I stopped with that.
People can find all your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, on the YMS main channel on YouTube, which is where, the most viewed videos are, is where there's links to other things. So I guess you could just look in the About section or just search YMS on YouTube. You'll find the other links there. That's the easiest way to do it.
All right. Well,
thank you so much.
Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. Also, if you ever hear me play piano on stream, it's because you sent me that keyboard I think 2 or 3 years ago.
That music video that I was talking about, I wrote that song on that keyboard.
Oh, well, cool. Well, thank you. We all thank you. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming out.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah. Have a good one.
The news is divided. Ground news
wait, are we
puts
off?
it back together, with coverage from thousands of outlets around the world in one place, so you can spot sensational reporting.
We're bringing it back. Kidding, folks. We're bringing it back.
What? Sorry, wait, are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay, wait, sorry.
Super chats.
Yeah, super chats.
We're bringing it back.
Go.
All right, cool. What are your thoughts on the band Say Anything?
Oh boy, I forget what they are. Are they Canadian?
No.
Did you look up anything about them?
Oh, it was
what are they? Kind of like pop punk?
No, I'm actually just abusing my authority as a producer. It's one of my favorites.
I mean, I could look. It's your. So
I was curious if you knew anything. Anyway.
I don't remember. I feel like I must have heard a song from them. They sound familiar, but I just don't know anything.
All right, Jason Albrecht for $10 says, "What do you guys think about David Lynch as a director, especially his Twin Peaks series and Mulholland Drive movie?"
Love Mulholland Drive. I think that as a director, he's one of those people that. People use the word genius, but I wouldn't. I think that a lot of people say that to people that are both talented and crazy. They'll say that to people like Kanye West. But it's like, no, I think they're just talented and crazy. And he's done a lot for the film industry. A lot of things have been inspired by his works. I haven't watched all of Twin Peaks, but maybe I will someday. I don't think I've ever given one of his movies like a 10, though. So it's one of those situations where I think a lot of people love the tone and the vibe, and he's really good at communicating that sort of thing, but I need something a bit more personal to myself. So,
all right. Big Guy 4x4 asks, Destiny, you watched Critical Drinkers Why Hollywood Hates Men video, and were critical on the vagueness of his statements and selectiveness of movies he used. Thoughts on the types of movie reviews on YouTube, on those types of movie reviews on YouTube right now?
The problem is that I never have issues. Okay. This is my take. When I feel like people are reviewing movies from a political lens, it feels like when people say, I'm skeptical about 6 million for the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Where there is a good conversation to be had, but it is almost never by the people asking those types of questions.
Yeah.
I think you could have a fascinating conversation about historical events or about political themes in movies. I think you could have really cool conversations about it. But it feels like for these people, the political narrative is set in stone, and then that's retrofit. Like, rather than like a political narrative or a political lens being a way that you might view a movie, the movies just become a vehicle for you to talk about whatever you feel politically.
Audience capture and algorithm.
Yeah. So like if you feel like women are shitting on men in society, well, then you're going to look at movies and go, okay, well, Barbie, jokes about men, bullshit. Captain Marvel doesn't need a man harbor, bullshit. Tar, movie about a woman musician, bullshit. Like it's just everything becomes that. And rather than having like, I think what could be a legitimately interesting conversation about the roles of men and women in film and the replaceability of different characters or whatever, it's like a lowest common denominator of film critique, of any type of critique.
Wow, it turns out that literally everything I watch supports this belief that I have and propagate on the channel.
And my belief becomes explanatory for every single thing in the world that I happen to not like. Yeah.
It's just a given. You already know because you're watching the channel.
And it's just the lowest level of engagement ever. And it's like
it's lazy.
Yeah, and it's not even like, or at least from what, and I will say, I'll carefully say this because maybe there's some types of this commentary or critique that I haven't watched, but it's rare that I watch something like this and I'm like, oh, that is really interesting. This could have been shot way differently or written way differently, or something could have changed in this film that would have made it substantially better that the creator's like political vision was interfering with. It's usually more just like, this movie sucks and there's a woman there or a trans person and it would have been way better if not, because I'm going to compare it to this other movie that is a totally different film. And it's like,
I'm familiar with this action movie from the 80s that everybody unanimously loves.
Yeah, loved.
Why aren't they making the same movie again forever?
And now,
is the main criticism, really.
Yeah, so I think it's worthless.
Yeah.
I think it's without value, and I think it cheapens like critical thought of or critical evaluation of a particular medium, whether it's film or anime or whatever the fuck else. And it just becomes like a circle jerk for people to view their political narratives and whatever fucking stuff they're consuming, basically. Yeah. That's my feeling on it. Yeah.
All right, next up. This is from Probs. What are your thoughts about Love Exposure and why haven't you watched the director's cut?
What is with Sion Sono fans? It's one of those things, like maybe I'll watch it all the way through at one point eventually, but like I haven't connected with a single one of his films, and you guys are like, obviously he has some like pretty crazy, I mean, not necessarily crazy. There's people that connect with his work a lot. Let's see. Did I watch Love Exposure or not? Oh, is it not on my watch list? Is that Sion Sono? Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, I guess I'll watch it. What is that? 4 hours long? That's probably why I haven't seen it. But yeah, I've seen a bunch of his other, well, at least 2 of his other films and just didn't feel strongly about them, and other people being like, oh, this is like one of the best things ever made. I'm like, oh man. It's kind of dampened my expectations for Love Exposure. If I saw it, I don't even remember. It's not rated. I feel like maybe I tried watching it or something, but maybe I'll give it a shot. Thank you.
All right. How the F? This is from Feliz and many other Hispanic words that I cannot pronounce. How the F can Hollywood away from comic book rehash? How can Hollywood get away from comic book rehashes?
Yeah, I mean,
great from pushing the envelope and not remaking shit. Star Wars, Citizen Kane, etc.
The way to make Hollywood get away from that is to use your voice as a consumer and pay for and make smaller, not necessarily smaller, but more interesting art-driven films, make them financially successful. They will follow the money. And if the lesson that they wind up learning is, oh, trust artists, like A24, that seems to be a pretty successful business model for them, they're making money doing it. They might not be making as much money as Disney or Universal, but we have the power as consumers to vote with our wallets and make that a reality. And if there's enough people that really reward that sort of thing, and, you know, maybe we're never going to get to the point where it's going to, that type of idea is going to be the main idea of what sells a movie, but we can make it a big enough chunk of the market where it can change things and get more important art-driven art or artist-driven art funded, I think. So that's the way to beat it. Vote with your wallet. fucking buy hundreds of beavers and pirate Marvel shit. So
Buy hundreds of beavers. All right. This is from Real Serious. This is for both of you. What is a movie that you both 180'd on, in your opinion? They don't say which direction, so I mean, is there one? Yeah.
When I saw Battle of the Five Armies in theaters, I was lukewarm on it, and I was fine with it. And then when I saw the extended cut, like 5 years later, I thought it was so offensive that I think I made a death threat against Peter Jackson or something. I don't know. I said something crazy on stream. It was absolutely insane. I didn't actually do that, but I was very emotionally upset by it, and I think it's one of the worst movies ever. I think it's a scam.
Oh my God. Wait, why?
Battle of the Five Armies?
Yeah.
It's disgusting. It's just way too long, and it's embarrassing, and I think I've repressed most of the film. So if you really want to see why that's the case, then search up on YouTube YMS watch-alongs Battle of the Five Armies Extended Edition. You'll find a recording of me reacting in real time to the events of the movie, and you can see exactly why I hate it.
Steven, have you not seen the Hobbit trilogy?
Oh, is that the Battle of the Five? Is that part of the Hobbit?
Yeah, it's the third Hobbit.
Oh, I thought this was like politically offensive or like morally offensive, but you just made it was really bad.
It is morally. It's a war crime.
Yeah,
Okay.
What they did that.
No, I didn't watch any of the Hobbit shit. No, yeah. I mean, I like the two movies that I wouldn't say 180. The first one, I'll give a gentle, careful critique. On rewatching Whiplash, I think that I still really like the film, but I think all the scenes with Miles Teller and the girl are way weaker than I remember. They're pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not a perfect movie. It's not a perfect movie at all.
But the music scenes and everything are so kinetic and awesome that but then I've noticed
the energy.
Yes, a stark contrast between those scenes and the kind of romantic one, him exploring normal life or whatever.
There's a fun schlocky movie from the guy who directed that movie wrote a movie called Grand Piano with Elijah Wood. And it's a fun schlocky movie where there's like a piano performance piece and there's different emotions and very cheesy, but I would recommend it. It's fun.
Okay.
Just one thing to add. In the other direction, I watched a feminist French art house film from the 70s called Jean Diamant, 23 Quai du Commerce 1080 Bruxelles.
Jesus Christ.
Directed by Chantal Ackerman. And that film, the first time I watched it, because it's 3.5 hours of a woman cleaning her house, first time I watched it, I was like, okay, good meme. It was like kind of funny that it existed. It's well shot, and I got what it was going for to some extent. So I recommended it on my podcast as an April Fool's joke to make my podcast co-hosts watch the film and not tell them what it was. And since I rewatched it, I actually fucking fell in love with it, and I really connected with the choices that were made. And I won't go into too much detail about this. I talked about this a little bit last night. So my opinions on this are somewhere, but
okay. Another one, a thing I wanted to positively on was, did you ever see The Green Knight?
Yep.
I was so lost and confused when I watched that movie, and then I read through some Arthurian legend review stuff afterwards, so I had a much better understanding of what was going on. I rewatched and I went from like a 4 out of 10. Maybe that's what I should have done. Maybe what?
Maybe that's what I should do.
What?
Because I was lukewarm on it. I didn't watch it a second time yet.
I was like a 4 out of 10. I thought it was just I was so confused. And then I reread that all the different things represent different trials of like Arthurian values or whatever. And then I rewatched it and everything made way more sense. And I super liked it afterwards. I thought it was a way cooler movie. Yeah. And I appreciated the end.
It's an interesting director, so.
Yeah. Okay. Good on super chats?
We have one more. One more. Sorry for everyone else who donated, but we love and appreciate your support. But this is the last one. This is from Sisyphean Zero. Do you guys buy food at the theaters or sneak it in?
Depends on the theater. So Alamo Drafthouse, I'll fucking buy some food there because the food's really good. If I'm at a regular chain movie theater, what are my options? Popcorn? What
Hot
if I
dogs.
want what? This is bullshit. If I want a sandwich or I want a fucking apple or some shit, and I don't want to be like an unhealthy weirdo, or if I want a drink, if I wanted to bring a drink in, generally theaters don't care if you bring a backpack in. They just don't want you to be explicit that don't hold your snuck in food or whatever. But generally, I don't know, I'll bring in a snack or a bag. If it's an independent theater playing some really cool shit, if it's one of your local hometown theaters and not a chain, buy the drinks there, buy the popcorn there, because that's where they make their money and it keeps the theaters alive. Otherwise, chain theaters sneak shit in.
Cool. Otherwise, I'll do a final shout out. Also, I forgot to say this. We have a second sponsor apparently now for the show called Skillshare. Skillshare is a collaborative community where for only $10 a month, you can join to watch classes on almost anything or teach your own classes. You can learn art, photography, video editing, and so much more. So you can make music and movies just like we're talking about. And one day we'll critique them. I think that there's a link for that will be beneath the video if it's not already. And yeah, otherwise, thanks for joining me, Adam.
I'm going to plug one more thing.
Oh, plug
So
away.
one of the
Fuck
links
it, yeah.
that I mentioned earlier, my Twitch stream / my Kick and my YMS Plays on YouTube gaming channel. Every Sunday I do game streams, and I usually do that like all day. So if you're on a Sunday, you're looking for a streamer to check into, my game streams are every Sunday. Otherwise, every other stream is random. So
cool.
All right. Thank you so much. That was dope.
Thanks for joining me. Yeah.
All right. Good night, folks.
The news is divided. Ground News puts it back together with coverage from thousands of outlets around the world in one place. So you can spot sensational reporting, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. Beside every headline, you'll see who owns the source, how reliable it is, and if they have a political bias. Multiple perspectives side by side, giving you a well-rounded view of today's biggest stories. Visit ground.news to learn more.
All right. Both recording